following program is distributed by the Bears Barroom Radio Network. It's intended for all audiences. Draft on Tap with Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchenski.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Aldo Gandia, and do we have a show for you tonight? We are going to look at Danny and Neil's top 10 tight ends in this upcoming draft. We'll probably talk about a couple of other guys. In fact, I asked Danny for his top 10 list, and he sends me 11 names. So we're definitely going to talk about more than the top 10. But also we're going to dive into some more of this Russell Wilson talk, because apparently it's starting to heat up. The Seahawks are starting to take calls. And so we'll get the guys' opinions about a possible Russell Wilson acquisition. And we'll also talk about free agency, because I keep hearing the word bloodbath. It's going to be a bloodbath next week. So many guys are going to be released. So many guys are going to be looking for a new home. Aren't a lot of teams with tons of cap space, so it's going to be a really intense battle for these, as Brad Biggs called them, middle class free agents that are going to be out there. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how Ryan Pace and the Chicago Bears fill out the roster with these mid-level free agents who are going to be trying to find a home. Particularly, the challenge that he has is that he can't sell these free agents on a quarterback, because he really doesn't have one unless he's going to tout Nick Foles as a great quarterback. I also want to get the opinion of the guys on the importance of tape during this time where there is no COVID, there is no combine because of the COVID. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And Mac Jones is on my mind almost every day. The more and more I look at this guy, and the more and more I hear about him, he interests me so much more as a possible acquisition for the Chicago Bears. And then Mel Kiper got into some heat because he made the comparison of Mac Jones and Tom Brady. So we'll get to see a little bit of that tape and the guy's reaction to that. And I think that's about all we're going to cover, but we also should have lots of time to answer your questions. So if you're joining us live, fire your questions. Now, I've gotten some reports from people that questions on Twitter or Facebook don't come through on our YouTube. So if you can join us over at YouTube, just search Bears Barroom. We are there live, and we can see all of those questions via our YouTube mates. So let me bring the guys in now. So I'll start with Danny Shimon, and there's Neil. All three of us are here. How are you guys, Neil? You first.
Hey, doing well, Aldo. Another week, another round of rumors. Isn't it just fantastic how all these guys that we supposedly had acquired, we have 18 quarterbacks in the roster now? Man, it's nuts.
Yeah, and tomorrow there'll be 19, and the day after, 20. So, yeah, it's definitely heating up all the talk and the speculation. My nails are all gone because I'm on pins and needles with this. Danny, I saw you the other day, and you were telling me that you are dying to talk tonight about these tight ends. Are you really excited about these guys? You gave me 11 names instead of 10.
Well, I give you a 10A, not an 11. So, but yeah, I gave you 11 names. Yes, you're right. Okay, Aldo, you're right. It's just at the last couple of guys, I like both guys, but I just kind of to fit one in the top 10. I'm like, Neil does it. You don't give him shit about it.
You didn't do it this time, though. When was the last time you did that, Neil? You haven't done that in a while.
I did it last week. Leave me alone.
Okay. How quickly we forget. But I'm really excited to talk to you guys and get your opinions on what is going on in the NFL and the Chicago Bears. Of course, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy met the media. I got a few clips. Try to keep that as short as possible, just simply because I'm tired of hearing those guys basically say nothing, but I chose a couple of clips that might have been a clue as to what they're thinking. But first, I want to start with the talk about Russell Wilson. It was reported all over social media that the Seahawks have made calls to other teams. Now, this was actually amended by Diana Russellini, I believe her name is, over at ESPN. She says she was told that, yes, Russell Wilson is not happy, but the Seahawks are not initiating the calls. They are just getting the calls, which is basically the same thing, right? They're listening to trade requests. And so you have to know, of course, you have to agree that Ryan Pace is in on these calls. He wants to find out, what do they want for Russell Wilson? He's negotiating. Danny, we talked about this last week. Has your opinion changed at all about Russell Wilson possibly, somewhere out of the blue coming to the Chicago Bears in a massive trade?
Oh, like we said last week, there's three guys, and Neil and I think Aldo, you too, we agree on. There's three guys that are out there right now that I would say, yes, go get these three guys as opposed to getting one of these five guys in the draft. And that's, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and then Dak Prescott too, for me. If you get one of those three guys at quarterback, I think then you can, say, all right, I understand why they bypass one of these five guys in the first round. But yeah, my only fear is Ryan Pace, who, by the way, again, it says absolutely nothing in his press conference. He says that they have a plan, but yet everything's on the table. So if you have a plan, how's everything on the table? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. But my fear is he's going to give away the farm because, like I told you last week, he's going to do something big, and whenever Ryan Pace attacks a position group, he goes big, right? Whether it's one or two players or whatnot. So I think he's going to do something big. Whether it's going to be one of these guys, the veterans you talked about, whether it's going to be a move up in the draft. I think we're talking about the draft. I think number 2 is available. I think the number 3 pick is going to be available. I think number 6 is going to be available. Possibly number 4 with Atlanta. So there's a ton of ways for them to move up. And if you think about what the Chiefs gave up when they went from 27th to 10th, moved 17 spots up, and they gave up obviously that first round pick. I think a future first round pick, and I believe was also either a second or third round pick as well. So. If they can move up from 17 spots up, the Bears can do it. If they go from, say, 20 to 5, that's 15 spots up. So, if you're going to give up, next year's first round pick and this year's first round pick, I'd rather go get one of these 5 guys if you're not going to get a Russell Wilson, a Deshaun Watson, or even a Dak Prescott.
Stopchinski, your thoughts on a Russell Wilson trade?
And I'm just sitting here thinking that, or I should say just hoping, that we don't give up way too much to go ahead and get the guy. I mean, there's certain untouchables to me. Roquan Smith is the one that's being tossed around that I think is absolutely 100% untouchable. I think in a certain way you can sort of justify some of these other guys that have been big-time playmakers for either this offense or defense the past couple of years that, you get back Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson and Trey with a couple of these other guys factored in. I can go through a laundry list, but I'm not going to bore you guys. But I think Roquan Smith is probably the one guy to me that's 100% absolutely untouchable. A lot of these other guys, it'd be tough to get rid of them. But at the same time, if you're getting Russell Wilson back and you're not giving up a whole clown car's worth of draft picks for him, then, maybe you can justify that. I'm still holding on to the idea that, hey, listen, man, that office, that the front office, the management, the ownership could look at Ryan Pace still with that eye of, okay, well, he's doing it right. He's still trying to build. He's still trying to, make up for mistakes by getting up into the front end of this draft, the first end of this first round, and picking up a college kid. That to me has been from day one where I go with this. It's just interesting how Russell Wilson pops up when you feel like you're so sure on where you want this team to go. But again, it's just a matter of, to me, not leveraging too much of the franchise in order to get him.
But the one thing, though, Neil, you bring up a good point. Because the Bears are up against it in terms of the cap space. If you bring in a guy like Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, most of the money is invested on defense. That defense is not going to be the same, guys. Whether it's you include one of these guys in the trade back, which may or may not happen, but you can probably lose one of these guys. Whether it's Akeem Hicks and his $12 million. Whether if God forbid they trade Khalil Mack in this trade, that money, Kyle Fuller and his $20 million, you got to have to make some room on this team and for the salary cap to fit in a quarterback, whether it's a Wilson or a Watson. So this defense is not going to be the same if you make one of these big investments in these quarterbacks.
That is true. And James Foster just said that there's a $37 million cap hit if Wilson is traded, but that $37 million is on Seattle.
Right.
It's not on the Chicago Bears. And so it would be substantially less for the Chicago Bears to acquire Russell Wilson. But you better believe that there has to be some salary cap manipulation. And because of all of the COVID issues and the CBA changing as a result of that, I still think that there is going to be some news regarding the salary cap situation that's going to allow teams some flexibility with all of these players that are going to be free agents in the next couple of weeks. Because there's going to be a flood of players. And I know that the players union is just going to shout out loud to protect veterans who are making anywhere between $5 to $10 million. These are the guys that are going to be out on the street and being asked to sign $3-4 million contracts with their new teams. And that players union is just going to say, wait a minute, this should not be. And so there might be some manipulation of the cap. That's my guess. I don't have any inside information on that, but that is going to be huge. And that brings us to our next topic. What do you guys think about the news that there's going to be a bloodbath? There's going to be so many veterans out there. I started doing some homework. You know, the New Orleans Saints are one team that has to rid some salary cap. We saw them make 2 moves today, including their 9-10-year veteran punter. The Philadelphia Eagles, another team that's got to get rid of players. There are at least a dozen teams right now who are in salary cap hell. And the Bears are probably at that 10, 11. They're a few million dollars over, but the Bears are in a position where they can extend contracts and they can go from being in the red to being in the black in a matter of a day or two. So I'm not too worried about the Bears right now, but it's the Bears could be in a great position to pick up some bargains. You guys have any thoughts on that? Neil, you first.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people's draft boards are going to drastically change if that's the case. And, you know, you've already seen a little bit of a trickle effect of this starting to happen. I think it was just 24 hours ago Kyle Rudolph got released. And I might be a little messed up on my timing on that, but it was just recently, just this week, earlier this week, midweek, whatever. You know, you're going to have some interesting pieces falling on the table for a lot of teams that need critical pieces, and so it'll be interesting going into April after this bloodbath happens, if it's happening the way it's supposed to be rumored to be happening. You know, the way draft boards are going to be changing.
Yeah, and we talked about this before, guys. We've said that this is going to be, like I said, a bloodbath. There's going to be a flooded free agent market. We're going to be veterans that are going to be signing 1-year deals. That guys that typically would be, you know, signing off and, you know, multi-year contracts on the first day of free agency are going to be waiting around weeks and on. And might get a one-year deal, you know, for, you know, like $3-4 million, whatever they can get to trying to latch on to a football team. So this is where, if you think about it, if you are Ryan Pace and you're going to go ahead and give away some of your draft capital in order to replenish some of those players, you could go out in the free agent market and try and pick up some of these guys that are going to be let go due to salary cap restrictions. You know, the Packers are over, I want to say, you know, 30-some million over the cap as well. I mean, they're saying to lose Aaron Jones, you know, they're you know, Pro Bowl running back as well. So, you know, there's a ton of teams that are going to be over. I want to say the Bears kind of went like slightly below the cap after the screen cut, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I did see the recent numbers today that someone posted that I think they're still $4 million over, but I thought I read somewhere where they might have been slightly under the cap, but you know, we'll see how that goes. But I saw reports where they've already reached out to Cody Whitehair and Jackson as well, Eddie Jackson, to try and restructure their contracts. And you know, we talked about Akeem Hicks in his last year of his deal. You know, a nice way for him to go ahead and get extended. And you know, if you want to keep him around, he's only 31 years old, still a presence in the middle of your defensive line. I still like to keep him around, extend him, and lower his cap number. Kyle Fuller, last year of his contract, $20 million on the books. So definitely like to, you know, lower that and see if you can extend him as well. So again, if you're going to make a big play for these quarterbacks, you're going to have to cut someone somewhere or some money somewhere, or unless you have make some, you know, some salary cap magic and create some space, you know, by restructuring all these guys and just, you know, paying the piper down the road. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be something that, you know, March 17th is going to be a hectic day, I think, with a lot of, you know, people, you know, being released and a lot of guys being signed.
Mm-hmm. Kudos to Christopher Gonzalez, who is listening and watching our show, but he's got an eye on the Hawks game, and he updates us that the Hawks have scored and are now leading 1-0 over the nemesis Tampa Bay Lightning. Thanks, Chris. I like that. This is you can multitask and still enjoy Draft on Tap and a lot of the other shows on the Barroom Network. So I'm into that. Anyone else want to put a button on that talk before we move on to our next topic? All right.
No, I mean, I'm just curious. Like Kyle Van Noy got last year signed a 4-year deal with the Miami Dolphins. Got cut after 1 year. So well, it's like
there's late news on that. The news is that the cut isn't official they are trying to work out a trade. And so there's a possibility that he could be traded. We know one thing. He is not going to remain with the Dolphins this season because of the cap issues that they're facing. Caesar has a great question. He says, honestly, how many first-round picks is it going to take to get Russell Wilson? You guys have to believe that there have to be 3 first-rounders involved in this, right?
Well, I think 2 for sure. And if you give up any players, if you give up a Roquan Smith, if you give up some of the young talent, Jalen Johnson on this team, then it's probably going to be 2 first rounders, one of those players, and probably a future middle tier 3rd, 4th round pick as well. So if you go strictly just draft picks, then you're probably looking at probably 3 first rounders and another 2nd or 3rd rounder down the line. So I mean, it's for me 3 first rounders for a guy who's 32 years old. It might be a bit too much, but again, I love my draft pick, so I'm a guy that's very stingy when it comes to giving up draft picks. So, but if you're gonna do it for a guy that's gonna fill the position of need for how many centuries, or how many
decades?
Decades, thank you. That you want to finally fill it. And if you're Ryan Pace, you get that quarterback position settled, and you have a Pro Bowl, potential Hall of Famer playing there. Mm-hmm. I think you can kind of rest comfortably next year when Virginia or Jordan McCaskey come knocking on your door, give you a contract extension.
That's right.
I think I'm drawing the line at 2 draft picks right here. I'm gonna start getting really skittish if I'm starting to hear 3 draft picks being thrown into this conversation. And then after that, you got to start getting creative. Because again, I mean, there's certain kids to me that are untouchable. Roquan being one of them. Jalen Johnson, you brought up, Danny. I'm almost 100% untouchable with him too, because I think he's going to be the next in a long line of really good corners.
I'm just talking about guys that who would other teams want, right?
Yeah, right.
And Jalen Johnson are the first ones to come to me. Eddie Jackson would have been one a couple of years ago, but now he's overpriced in terms of for production on the field. So, I mean, Khalil Mack, would they be interested in taking a Khalil Mack? And then if you guys do that, now you're back there with no pass rusher again. So, it's going to be a tough decision.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. One of the things I threw out there on Twitter, and just a question, I was attacked mercilessly, but my question is, what would you guys think if the Bears are working on a sign and trade deal with Mitchell Trubisky? Mitchell Trubisky is still a member of the Chicago Bears until March 13th, when the new contract year begins. The old one ends. So he is still property of the Chicago Bears. So it's unlikely that any team is going to want to trade for Mitchell Trubisky unless the Bears can manipulate the cap in a way. And this has been done before, although I don't think the NFL really likes it when teams do this, is that they sign a player, and then that bonus that goes to that player, the team that's trading the player away, they pay that, just like the cap hit that the Seattle Seahawks are incurring. If they trade Russell Wilson, then that would be what would happen to the Chicago Bears. So if Seattle said, well, listen, we won't have a quarterback if we trade you Russell Wilson, but we're sort of interested in Mitchell Trubisky, work out a deal with Mitch where you guys are paying the big time bonus dollars so that it kind of equates to what we have to pay Russell, and include him in the package. Like Neil said, the 2 first rounders, or like other people speculate, the 3 first rounders, include that in the package, a couple of other players. Am I totally off my rocker that this is a possibility that the Seattle Seahawks would say, Mitch Trubisky, get the F out of here. We don't even want to look at him. Danny is raising his eyebrows, so you go first.
I mean, I don't know if you were just, in the bottle this afternoon when you came up with this theory or this question. I mean, it's creative. I give you an A+ for effort. But I mean, you're assuming that the Seattle Seahawks want Mitch Trubisky, first of all. So, and then all the cap ramifications. I mean, I'm not a cap expert. I don't even try to pretend I know what the hell how to read that salary cap rules and all that stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's far-fetched. It's never happened before. I know that there's been, was it Brock Osweiler, where the Browns were given a 2nd-round pick to take his contract off the Texans salary cap. I think that's happened before, but you're talking about signing a player, accruing that salary, that signing bonus, and then trading him to I don't know if that can be done. I'm not sure.
Neil, you think I'm crazy too, right?
I mean, again, I talk about being creative with your stock that you're sending on over after you get past the first couple your couple of first round picks.
Mm-hmm.
I read that like, oh well, kind of sounds crazy, but hey, crazier things have been said and crazier things have been done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think Pete Carroll wants Mitch Trubisky, but I don't know. I can't speak for him. I know that much.
Well, we'll see if that's even a possibility. I hope that it happens just so that I can go back to the people who were calling me nuts on social media and say, see, but it was just a question, people. I just want to get.
So the real question is, did you come up with that on your own or where'd you get that from? That idea?
No, I came up with it on my own.
What were you drinking?
4 Roses, I think it was.
Oh, okay. Nice.
A
single barrel or what do you got going on? Single barrel?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my gosh. It's a small batch select too.
Beautiful.
Yeah. The good stuff.
Absolutely.
A lot of talk in the chat room about keeping those draft assets, not making a trade for any of these veteran quarterbacks, and then solidifying the offensive line and getting a playmaker in those first 2 rounds, and then finding a guy like Jamie Newman or Kellen Mond in the mid-round picks, because we know Newman and Mond are day 3 guys, and maybe Newman is a late day 2 guy, maybe. But so what do you guys think about that approach? So you're basically saying Nick Foles is going to be the starter week 1 while we're working on Mond and Newman or Newman or Mond to be the starter down the line. Neil, you first.
Well, I think I've well established. I'm not a fan of Jamie Newman, to begin with. Kellen Mond will be okay if you catch him in the 4th round and you set him up to be your developmental guy behind a veteran. I'm not, jazzed up about the thought of Nick Foles being a starter week 1. I think the only way that Nick Foles is a starter week 1 is if you trade up and get, one of these 5 studs in the beginning of the 1st round, and you sit that guy on the bench behind, maybe Nick for a couple games. Or maybe you start him right away. I don't know. But, I think that once you get to the middle of the season, you're going to have a rookie starting in that case. Kellen Mond is a nice developmental guy that has a lot of really nice traits. I don't think he's a difference maker. I don't think he's your answer. I think, if you're solidifying this position, if you're solidifying QB1 this offseason, you have to look at David Sills is another one that's been really interesting to look at the past couple of weeks. I looked at him around last weekend, but even David Sills comes with a lot of question marks. David Sills isn't a difference maker. I don't think he's an answer. I think you have to go and get one of these big time veterans if you're going to go win now mode, or you have to show that you're in big time rebuild mode and go get a big time college stud and trade up and just throw a few picks at somebody and get a young guy and show that you got it together and you're bringing in one of the best young quarterbacks in America. I think that's the way you got to go with it. I don't think Jamie Newman or Kellen Mond or Davis Mills or enter anybody else here is going to solve this problem, and then we're going to be back in the same situation 2 years down the road. Pace will be fired, Nagy will be fired. And now we will be looking for a new quarterback, and we're going to be looking for a new coach, we're going to be looking for a new GM. I think that just creates more problems than it solves.
For me, if the Bears head into next season with Nick Foles as a starting quarterback and either Jamie Mond or Jamie Newman or Kellen Mond as their backup quarterbacks, I think you can start looking at possible replacements for both Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, because that's career suicide. Not that I do not like either one of the young kids in terms of Mond or Newman. They both have traits that I like. They both have skill set that I like. I just don't think they're ready to come in and start right away. I know you plan on having Nick Foles as your starter, but eventually we know Foles, he is what he is, right? If he's not, ineffective, he's going to get hurt. And once he's hurt, then you put one of these young kids in, and then they're going to be guys that are not ready to play right away. So now if you go get yourself a veteran quarterback, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, and you still draft a Kellen Mond in the 3rd or 4th round, or a Jamie Newman in the 3rd or 4th round, you know what? I like that plan, because now you got a young guy in the pipeline that once he sits back behind that veteran and he develops, eventually down the road, you might have another starter that, hey, you know what? If your guy is still going strong, you guys are still happy, everything's still, hunky-dory here in Chicago, you have a nice developing young quarterback ready to be traded, and you can recoup some of the draft picks you lost in trading for the veteran starter. So, if I'm going to bring in one of those young guys, like I said, I like their skill sets, I like their traits. I just don't think they're ready to start right away, week one in the NFL. So, and I just can't count on Nick Foles.
The factor asks, give me a percentage on the Bears landing Wilson or Mac Jones. Danny, what do you think? What are the percentages of
something's going to happen? I think Ryan Pace is going to do something big, right? Whether it's one of these guys, either Watson or Wilson, or he's moving up in the first round. Obviously, if he doesn't get Watson or Wilson, I think then his next play is going to be moving up in the first round to try and get one of these guys. And the talk right now is Zach Wilson is going number 2 overall. So you're going to go up with the Jets and trade for Zach Wilson. Now, again, I love Zach Wilson's skill sets. I love some of the things he put on tape. But for me right now, the second best quarterback in this draft is Justin Fields. And predominantly because of the fact that I've seen him do it against bigger competition. That Clemson game really sold it for me. I'm not going to base it off of just one game, but I'm saying like the whole season last year and what he did this year, and then that Clemson game where everyone was questioning him and his ability to lead and win, and he came through and he dominated Clemson. So for me, Justin Fields is number 2 overall. So if you're going to go up there and get either a Justin Fields and I love Mac Jones, guys. I love Mac Jones, and right now for me, he's the 4th best quarterback in this draft, behind obviously Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, and then it'd be Mac Jones. So if you get those 1-2 guys moving up in the 5th or 6th spot, hey, I'm good with it. It all depends in terms of a percentage. It all depends on what they do with free agency and with those veterans. If they do not get one of those guys, I think the percentage obviously goes up. I'd say probably in the 60-70% range if they're probably going to try and trade up and get one of those guys.
Neil?
Yeah, I think as it stands here today, Patrick Kane just put one in the back of the net, by the way. I think as it stands here today, you're at 0% with Russell Wilson because it sounds like they're not even entertaining offers. They're just taking phone calls. And with, I think it's kind of a toss-up with Deshaun. I think Ryan Pace is sitting there in his office with his head in his hands trying to figure out what he can do with this roster and be creative and still not mortgage the franchise. But again, I think that we've been over this so many times. I think the only way that this works going forward is you get a legit veteran. I would even consider Alex Smith a legit veteran. If you get him in there, see, there you go. Me and 4, my melt right there, right?
Jeremy Moore.
Fitzpatrick, absolutely not. But Alex Smith, I think still has some miles left on the odometer there. I would even consider that being, a good move over having Nick Foles start the year. Right. And if you do that, bringing in somebody like, Kellen Davis or Jeremy Mond or whoever it is that you're talking about over there, 3-headed monster of mid-round quarterbacks, bring one of those guys on to develop. I'm fine with that. But, again, I think going back on it, you got to be creative about moving up in this draft and getting one of the young studs. And I think that shows. I think it shows a lot of things. I think it shows that you're willing to, put your balls on the table and make a big time move, and you're going to get a guy that's going to save the franchise. I don't think that number one, management or I should say ownership is going to look in front upon that. And I think the fan base is going to be pretty jacked up too. And then we're going to go in the second round and grab us a offensive tackle, replace Massey. I think that's I think those are the 2 most plausible cases in this case.
Yeah, although you and I talked about Alex Smith the other day, and I think he is an option for the Bears, whether it's to come in and be a bridge quarterback, if they get a young guy and they want to develop him, or they be a backup for that young guy, because I think Nagy knows firsthand that Alex Smith can mentor a young quarterback. He did it in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. So I think Alex Smith is an option. If Philly's looking for a backup quarterback, does Philly want Nick Foles, the guy they have a statue out in front of their stadium back for a 6th or 7th round pick? Hey, take him back. We bring in Alex Foles. I can't talk to Alex Smith, and then he
the same guy in my opinion.
He starts and while the kid's getting ready, or worst case scenario, you have a veteran, or you have a young kid who is ready to start, and Smith is a backup. So I think Alex Smith has a chance to be on this roster next season.
Tuesday, Pace and Nagy met the media. They talked for about 45 minutes. They had about 15 seconds of interesting things to say. This is Ryan Pace talking about the plan for quarterback, and then he also talked about Mitch Trubisky.
Right now for us, everything's on the table in regard to the quarterback situation. And honestly, that includes players on our current roster. That includes free agency, trade, the draft, and a combination of all those. So we have a plan in place, and now it's about executing that plan.
Have you made a determination whether Mitch Trubisky will return next year, or whether you're interested in a return from him?
Yeah, again, that's going to be part of our offseason plan, and we're not going to lay all that out right now, Pat. It's just those are all internal discussions we've had, but I would say again, everything's on the table with all the quarterbacks.
It's interesting that he didn't say something like, Mitch is right now under contract to the Chicago Bears. We like Mitch Trubisky, whether he's going to be back next season. He's not under contract for next season. What remains to be seen. We're developing our plan, and we're looking at everything, like I said. Instead, it wasn't a ringing endorsement of Mitch Trubisky. In fact, Matt Nagy had nicer things to say about Mitchell Trubisky than Ryan Pace, which I thought would have been kind of different, because Mitch Trubisky is Ryan's guy. He selected him with the second overall pick, but nothing new there that he commented on. He's got a plan. It's a multifaceted plan, because there's a lot of, if this happens, then we got to go here, plan B. They got a 26-step plan, 25 different options if option number 1 doesn't happen.
To me, I read that as Mitch Trubisky's done. He's gone. Because, he said quarterback's currently on the roster. And I think the only one currently signed to the roster right now as a contract is Nick Foles. So I think that's just the way he's just kind of talking around it. And again, it's Ryan Pace, lying with a straight face to all of us here, telling us that, or making people believe that Mitch Trubisky has a chance. So it's the only thing I got out of that whole press conference was the fact that Khalil Mack and Jalen Johnson didn't have surgery after the offseason. That's the only bit of information I really got out of Ryan Pace's press conference on the other day.
I do give them credit, though. They collaborated really well on finding a new word to regurgitate over and over and over again during a press conference, and that's the plan this time. Right. Good thing they have a plan. I'm glad that they have a plan. Again,
everything's on the table, though. Everything's on the table, but we have a plan.
You're right. So are a bunch of puzzle pieces when you get them out the box too. I have a plan of putting that together at the front end, but it's just a clusterfuck to begin with. But let's go ahead and be honest. So Ryan Pace, whenever he's at a podium or whenever he's in front of a Zoom call, he looks scared shitless to talk to these reporters. Mm-hmm. He just looks tense and tight, and he doesn't. It's like you're standing up in front of a firing squad
because he's trying not to let anything slip out. That's why.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Right. All right. Let's listen to Matt Nagy talking about the search for the quarterback.
There's a lot of different ways that we could go right now, right? Whether it's with Mitchell, whether it's with Nick, whether it's if it's with somebody outside, and there's a lot of different ways that it could go. And I've always been a quarterback. I've always played the position my entire life. I have fun evaluating the position. And seeing what other players do well and don't do well, and then how it fits into where we're at. Right now, we're literally in the thick of everything, and just so many what if this, what if that. And it's our job to work together to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's together. Everybody, not just Ryan and myself, but the coaches, the personnel, and talking through different scenarios. There's so many things involved. Some things that are out there and some things that aren't out. And so I just go back to your original question. For me, I love the process. I really enjoy it. I feel like over time, for myself, selfishly, there's confirmation in that. And so that part's what excites me.
There actually is a lot to dig into there, and perhaps the big nugget is there's a lot of things out there, some that are out there, some that are not. So
Ryan Pace said the same thing, that there are some things that are out there in the media, some things that are not. So then I was trying to think, like, what hasn't been reported? It seems like the Bears have been, rumored to be involved in every single quarterback that could possibly be in the market. So, I think the Raiders shot down the whole Derek Carr thing yesterday with Mayock saying that they love Derek Carr and they see him being the quarterback. Unless Jimmy Garoppolo, and he becomes available, and somehow the 49ers get a Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, and although they were not on Wilson's list of 4 teams, so maybe at Deshaun Watson, something like that, helping for the 49ers, and then Garoppolo becomes available. But then you hear New England wants Garoppolo back if he's no longer with San Francisco. So it's like all these different dominoes that could fall, but who knows? I just have a feeling, and I'll keep saying this, I don't know what it's going to happen, but it's going to something big's going to happen. Whether it's one of these veterans or it's a move up in the draft. That's how they're going to address this. I do not see them staying status quo with Mitch Trubisky as their starting quarterback.
What do you think, Neil?
Those comments are intense down there, Aldo.
We're getting
unbelievable.
Getting some great ones, right?
Man, turning up the heat in the show.
Yeah, hate hearing this guy talk.
I mean, I know the fan base hates Pace and Nagy, but I mean, holy cow.
That is good stuff, man. You can write comedy material
on
that. Neil, what is your opinion about those two guys, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy? If you could fire them tomorrow, would you do it?
I mean, I don't ever want to hold anybody above the blazing inferno like that. But you know, it really bothers me when nobody can answer questions.
Yeah.
You know, just a little bit of transparency is really all I ever ask for a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if you guys watch Chris Ballard's stuff. Did you watch Chris Ballard's end of year press conference? He gave you a lot of answers, man.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you a lot of answers.
Yeah.
And
without giving away his plan.
Yeah, 100%. And he was almost obnoxiously authentic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just give us some authenticity. Unless this is just Ryan Pace being authentic, I don't know. Maybe he is just this dry and this shut down and this. You know,
I think he's so secretive that's why he is so horrible to listen to. And Matt Nagy actually offered a lot during his first season with the Bears, but I think Ryan Pace had a talk with him and said, "Dude, you can't. You know, we're very secretive around here. We took Mitch out to dinner under different names. We didn't want anybody to know." Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, Neil, but I really do think that he is so secretive that's why he's such an irritant to listen to.
I also don't think we need costumes to go and scout quarterbacks either. Like, what is he doing dressing up like Matlock in North Carolina scouting Mitch Trubisky for?
He was just in drag, actually. It wasn't just as Matlock.
Right, face and drag.
No. That's why I didn't understand the whole Carson. That's why I didn't believe the whole Carson Wentz thing, because it was like, this was out in the open, it's public. Like, that's not the way Ryan Pace works. Like, no one in the Bears organization talks like that, right? And like they don't let things sneak out like that. So that was obviously all Philadelphia trying to get, you know, Ballard and the Colts to up the ante and you know, hopefully that Ballard and Colts didn't fall for it, and they ended up, you know, sticking to their guns and getting him for what they got him for. So that was all Philly trying to blow smoke up everyone's ass.
Yeah,
I don't think you can keep one. You know, Chris just posted you fire one, keep the. I don't think you're in a position where you
clean house. Yeah, you clean house.
You gotta cut nuts.
Yeah,
across the board. If that's what you're trying to do. I mean, and you know, the thing is too is that there are, you know, I know, you know, most, if not all of that personnel department, there are some really talented eyes in that personnel department. So that just makes me wonder if, you know, what's going on at the top there, that, you know, who's really making the, you know, is it Pace? Is there consternation? Is it, you know, Ted or you know, McCaskey coming down and saying, hey, this is what we think, even though they tell us in the end of year press conference that they have nothing to do with football decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of transparency that you'd like to hear a little bit, just to get an idea of how the decision-making process is working. And I get that, you know, when you're within the four walls of the franchise, you don't just let everything, you know, out the doors and stuff. But
absolutely,
you know, when you're taking this kind of heat, you know, normally isn't the basic reaction to fan the flames, to, you know, bust out the fire extinguisher, to, you know, to keep it from burning down the house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that, you know, just a little bit of transparency as to, you know, how they go about some of the decisions that they make would probably calm down the fan base a little bit. But instead, you just get all these dry responses, and you know, you're just stuck behind this wall, and you can't get any real answers to anything.
Neil, do you want to address this from Tony? If Chris Sims is right about these quarterbacks this year, he's our new GM. I know you reacted in a very negative fashion to Chris Sims' listing of the quarterbacks.
Yes, Chris Sims, our foremost authority on absolutely nothing. He is awful. I used to watch Pro Football Talk, and I thought, you know, hey, well, you know, Chris Sims, I never thought he was really that bad. I couldn't stand Florio, but Chris Sims, he's okay. Nope.
He's bad.
Nope. Ended that real quick.
Yeah.
No, Chris, I want to know how much Dogecoin my man over here has. My man with the ski last name. How much Dogecoin does he have in his wallet right now? He's got that pretty cute little avatar with the dog
Steven?
on it.
Are you talking Steven or who are you talking about? Oh,
No,
Tony.
Tony.
Yeah.
Tony's got the Dogecoin avatar. I wonder how much he has in his wallet right now.
Interesting.
Anyways, we're getting off track.
Yeah, I want to move on to I got another soundbite here from Nagy talking about the traits that he's looking for as a quarterback. He had one of his typical long responses where he didn't say much, but then he kind of recapped it here. So I chose the last 10 to 15 seconds of what he said.
I'd say leadership, decision making, and if you have some versatility as a quarterback with your legs, great. If you don't, no problem. We can work around it.
Interesting that he didn't say accuracy.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's number one. If you can't throw the ball anywhere around here, then I don't want you on the team. I've seen too many Bears quarterbacks throw it over there, throw it on the ground. That's to me, and he's putting such a high price on mobility. In fact, at the beginning of the soundbite, that's the first thing he talked about. He talked about athleticism. He talked about being able to move it. And so he's so in love with that mobile quarterback. I don't get it. Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, when he says mobile, it doesn't necessarily mean, Lamar Jackson mobile. He's talking about guys that are in the pocket that can buy some time, whether it's, shuffling their feet left or right or backpedaling and maybe moving around there just to get away from pressure, to give their guys, some time downfield. I think that's what he means by mobility. At least that's what I look for when I look for mobility. And if a guy can be a Lamar Jackson with the ball, hell, that's even added bonus. But a guy that's not just, stuck back there, 3 or 5 step drops back there and he doesn't move. And if the offensive line collapses, he's done. The play's over with. And that's not what I want. But in terms of other things talked about, leadership, that's something that obviously that quarterback position is the leader of the offense. Sometimes he's the leader of the whole team, depending on how great he is. So, that's going to be key as well. But I mean, for me, accuracy has got to be something that's got to be up there. Decision making has got to be something up there as well. So, leadership, decision making, accuracy, and then mobility. Someone that can at least, not be just a standing statue back there are going to be keys, at least for me. But yeah, I mean, it's something like, when he says mobility, I think it doesn't necessarily mean, at least I hope it doesn't necessarily mean a guy like Lamar Jackson. There's not a lot of those guys that are going to be that type of mobile quarterback. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily need my quarterback to be a running back. I don't need a running back that can throw the football down the field. That's not how you win. In this league, that guy has to, yes, be mobile. He has to not be a standing statue back there. I don't think that we're in a position anymore to where we're scouting, Ryan Mallets anymore in this league. I don't think they even exist in college football anymore. But to me, it's intelligence, it's processing. The leadership should be a foregone conclusion, in my opinion. I think what you need is that dude to have the intelligence and the ability to, process, sophisticated defenses in order to, number one, just know where to go with the damn football. And then having the arm talent, the mechanics, the ability to get it from A to B and push it down the field, especially in the natural elements that you're playing in on Lake Michigan at Soldier Field. I think those are really the top two things you need to talk about. The stuff up here and the stuff in the arm. And I think every single one of those 5 guys at the top of the draft has it. Obviously, Russell Wilson is a magician, and Deshaun Watson has been running for his life. So he has mobility part down, and he's always been a guy that's been able to get the ball from A to B. So, I mean, and again, we go back to Alex Smith all the time. I think Alex Smith will be a nice bridge. But I mean, you look at using advanced math, 8 of those options, those satisfy those very specific benchmarks that you need at that quarterback position. And, unfortunately, you've been playing 3 years with a guy that couldn't do one of those 2 things at a high level.
The quarterback in the draft that is the least mobile is the guy that I'm sort of most interested in potentially being the Chicago Bears quarterback, because it's unlikely they're going to get the top guys. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, we know where he's going. And then after that, it's a free-for-all for the other quarterbacks. But the guy that could most likely be available to the Chicago Bears is Mac Jones. And Mel Kiper got a lot of crap this week because he compared Mac Jones to Tom Brady. Let's listen to Mel Kiper defend what he was talking about.
So when you look at Mac Jones, he's not Joe Burrow. He doesn't have the ability to beat you with his legs and run for first downs, okay? But he slips, he slides, he creates with his legs enough in the pocket to get the ball to those receiving options, as he did in that national championship game when he got the ball to Jaleel Billingsley, tight end, to help beat Ohio State. Now, he completed over 77% of his passes. You referenced his touchdown-interception ratio. I've talked about his leadership, his competitiveness, his incredible intelligence. I get all that, his incredible accuracy. But some have called quarterbacks like Mac Jones a dinosaur. Well, Tom Brady, if he's a dinosaur, he won a Super Bowl at 43. And he was a late sixth-round pick when he came out. I was comparing more Mac Jones to what Tom was when he came out of Michigan, not what he was when he became the greatest of all time.
I know you guys have differing opinions on Mel Kiper. I know. I'll try to represent your thoughts quickly here, but Danny isn't so much bothered by Mel as much as Neil is. So I'll let you guys go at it and talk about what Mel Kiper just said.
Yeah, but what Mel said, and for me is something that I've been saying since our first show this year was Mac Jones is not going to be he's not the athlete that the other four guys in this first round are going to be, but he's a guy that has the ability to go ahead and, like I said earlier, move, shuffle his feet, buy some time in the pocket, and he processes so quickly, both pre and post snap, that he knows where to go with the ball. Even if he's not, it doesn't have a situation where he can buy some more time and get away from a pass rusher, he gets rid of the ball real quick. So it's and Tom Brady and Drew Brees are a couple of guys I named as well, in terms of guys who are not overly athletic but are smart in the pocket, that can kind of maneuver themselves, still find those passing lanes, passing windows to get rid of the football. And I think that's what he was trying to say. People are trying to say, Mel Kiper's calling Mac Jones the next Tom Brady. I think that's ridiculous. That's not what he meant. I think I understood exactly what he was talking about. And in terms of Mel Kiper overall, I mean, that guy's been doing it for 30 plus years now. I mean, that guy is the reason why I got into this. And I was a fan of his when I got into it, and I got his books and all that stuff. So for me, he's a legend. Some of these Johnny come latelys now that are out there on this 4-letter network that I refuse to name are just guys that are just throw shit up against the wall. They get stuff from their friends, whether they're agents or their GMs or their scouts, and they just put you out there. They don't do the work. Mel Kiper actually breaks down and does the work, and you can ask Greg Gabriel. He'll back that up. He'll say that Mel Kiper actually does the work, and I respect his work till this day.
And I think Mel Kiper is Vegas Elvis, but that's besides the point. I don't know who is talking about. I'm not sure who is talking about Mac Jones in terms of being a dinosaur. There's nothing There's nothing antiquated about the way that he plays the game.
I think it's just because he's not as athletic as the other guys, and everyone's talking about this. Now as NFL quarterbacks, the guys are they run, they'll be able to get away from rush pressure and all that stuff. And I said, he's not that immobile, guys. He's a guy that has some athletic ability. I think you were telling me in high school he ran was it the wishbone offense or something like that?
Yeah, he ran option ball at Bishop Kenny.
Option ball, all right. So it's like he's not as mobile as Trey Lance or probably as a Trevor Lawrence or as a Justin Fields or a Zach Wilson, but he's a guy that has the ability to process quickly. He can move and buy some time in the pocket. He's plenty mobile enough in terms of today's NFL to be able to play in this league, and I think he's going to be successful.
And I think the people that think that the guy is a standing statue are going to be pleasantly surprised the first time he actually has to avoid pressure and make something happen with his feet at the next level. Because the guy can run, and he has more than enough, like you were just saying, he has more than enough mobility in the pocket. We've been talking about this ad nauseum for how long have we been talking about quarterback standing? Since September. Every single show. Yeah. Every single show. It seems like every show we're breaking down Mac Jones too. Trying to defy people's stereotypes on this guy can't run, and he has a dad bod, and oh my God, look at him with his shirt off. Who cares? This kid, you guys do realize, and I'm not talking about you, Dan. I'm not talking about you, although I'm not saying just general public. We do realize this kid's a hell of a lot more talented in college than Tom Brady was, right? Tom Brady was a very average. He couldn't even start at Michigan. Drew Henson was the guy that was supposed to be the golden boy. Tom Brady had to go ahead and fight for his life as a quarterback in Michigan. He wasn't that talented, and obviously he went in the 6th round. Mac Jones is going to go in the top 10, top 15. I mean, if Mac Jones was running Michigan's offense back in 1997, was it 97? When when Tom Brady took him to the Rose Bowl? I think it was 97 or whenever it was back in the late 90s. I mean, Mac Jones would have been probably easily a Heisman Trophy winner. He would have, I mean, it would have been absurd the kind of production he would have accomplished in that offense at Michigan, especially with the way that they played defense there. That defense was nasty. But
right.
I mean, just comparing the two, first off, is just absurd to me. So I already despise that comparison. But I despise even more, the people that want to go ahead and stereotype the kid just because he took his shirt off and, looks like a 45-year-old that hasn't played football in 20 years.
And the other narrative around Mac Jones is the fact that, he played with so much talent at Alabama. Listen,
that drives me nuts too.
When receivers have crappy quarterback play, we always say, if they had a better quarterback, they'd have better numbers. Well, you know what? Mac Jones, first of all, he did it with just one receiver, Devontae Smith. Tua had more weapons around him last year with Waddle and Smith and some of the other guys that left, Ruggs. So, this guy did it basically with just Devontae Smith for most of the season once Waddle got hurt and Nagy Harris in the backfield. And you know what? He made receivers, play better. He made receivers better. He threw them to a spot. He threw them open away from coverage. That's accuracy. That's decision making. That's being able to get the receiver on the spot. That's not, him being, his numbers are just because he had great talent. Stop that narrative. Watch the tape, dig into his tape, watch how this kid plays, watch how he processes pre and post snap, watch what he does, the little things in terms of moving around the pocket, and then come in and give me this thing that, he sucks or he can't play in this league.
This is Jalen Waddle talking about the two quarterbacks he played with at Alabama.
This one might be unfair, but I'm gonna ask you either way, right? So bear with me, Jalen. Article last week that said when Devontae Smith was in Mobile and he was talking to all the teams, someone asked him, "Hey, who'd you prefer, Tua or Mac?" And he allegedly went, "Oh, Mac." Can I ask you the same question?
I like Mac Jones too. I like Mac Jones. Just my preference. Both of them great quarterbacks, but I love Mac. He was the guy that I came in with, and from day one, we was on the third team together, and we worked our way up. So Mac.
That's a pretty nice endorsement where those two world-class type receivers are saying Mac Jones is my quarterback over Tua.
And that's not just talk, in my opinion. I think that's sincere, because if you take a look at what he did in the Senior Bowl, like Mac Jones, that first couple of the practices, he went up there and you saw him talking to his receivers. They just met basically maybe for a couple of days ago. And he's saying, "Hey, where do you want the ball at? How can I do better? How do I get the receivers appreciate that? That's leadership. That's a guy taking control and command of the offense so that he can put his players, his receivers in a position for them to succeed, for them to utilize their skill set and get those yards after the catch." So, I think that's sincere from those two guys. And I think they're just talking the truth.
Yeah, Tony says, poor Dolphin fans.
We've been saying that for about 25 years.
That's right. And that brings, the Dolphins have what, the fifth pick in the draft? Third pick. That's right, from the Texans. And so there's the possibility that they might want to, maybe move down. I think they got 2 first-round draft picks. Mm-hmm. They might move down and to pick Mac Jones with the 10th pick or something like that. So Tua might be available. Well, Danny, I once said that Tua was a third-round caliber quarterback, and you yelled at me on social media. What are your thoughts about Tua Tagovailoa as a Chicago Bear?
Well, I mean, who are my options, right? Are you talking about, is it Tua or Mitch Trubisky? I'll rather take my chances with Tua. He's still a guy that I believe still has some talent. What I was arguing with you about was that you're after a handful of games and him being, in and out of the lineup, you were saying that, he's a bust already. I'm like, that's too early to call him a bust.
I don't think I said that he's a bust. I think that I said that, I just didn't agree that he was a 5th pick. Just like I said that Mitch Trubisky was 2nd-round caliber. I thought that Tua was a late 1st-round, 2nd-round quarterback. He just didn't have the body of work. He just never looked, and I love left-handed quarterbacks. I'm lefty, but he just never impressed me in a way that he should be a top 5 pick. That's for sure.
With college, with Tua, in terms of his accuracy downfield, I had questions about his size overall. I had questions about his durability. I had questions about his overall arm strength to be able to make those NFL type tight window throws. But in terms of, his pocket presence, his feet in the pocket, he had some quick feet. His ability to navigate that pocket, buy some time was was pretty remarkable. So I think he's a kid that you need some time to develop. You need to work in a system that kind of highlights his strengths, if you will. It's those intermediate routes, those accuracy, the ability to get him out on the run. I think he's a guy that can process. We have to prove it, right? But similar to with me and Baker Mayfield, like I had a late first, early second round grade on Baker Mayfield. I did not have him as a first pick overall in the draft. So that's my argument with Baker Mayfield. So if you're trying to say the same thing, now I understand what you're trying to say, that he's probably not worth a fifth overall pick, but he's still a first round caliber quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Neil, I just feel like there's been a lot of quarterbacks over the last few years that have been chosen as first round draft picks, and they really didn't deserve it. This year is different. Those top 5 quarterbacks who are going to go in the first round, I think they all have first round talent.
I 100% agree. And I mean, we are talking hypotheticals a little bit. I mean, nothing's, guaranteed or, set in stone yet, but right. I mean, as far as, first round talent quarterbacks, the Lightning just scored.
Oh no.
Unfortunately. There's nothing to hate more than losing to the Lightning. Maybe the Red Wings or the Blues, but I think all 5 of these guys have all the traits that you're looking for, and as far as being able to process and the football intelligence and those types of things, I think these guys have everything that you need, and they have the physical traits and the character intangibles, and I think a lot of these guys that have come out in the past 20 years. I saw an unbelievable graphic the other day. I wish I screenshot it or wrote it down or whatever, but they showed the last 25, 27, whatever it was, first round quarterbacks, and only a fraction of them are with their current teams or even stayed in the league for more than 5 years, which I thought was absolutely incredible. Mm-hmm. I think all 5 of these guys are going to have longevity in the league. I think they're going to win a ton of games. Mm-hmm. I think the bust factor in all 5 of these guys is extremely low, which, knock on wood, because, I don't want to be the guy that is ascribed to, one of these 5 guys busting in 3 years. But I mean, you just look at the tape. Like we're talking about just looking at the tape. You look at the tape, you break everything down, and you're seeing what these guys are doing. And even from the most basic sense, the most primitive as far as intangibles and mechanics and the way you play the game, all the way up to the fine tuning of reading defenses and pre and post snap and making audibles at the line and setting the cover, the protections and everything else. These guys have seemingly no room to fail. Mm-hmm. Bust factor really low. I would not be upset about getting any single one of these players to lead this franchise forward for the next 10 to 15 years. Which is really what I think what you're going to have with either one of these 5.
Yeah.
If Neil, if you had to pick one of these 5 quarterbacks that, again, we're not saying they're going to be bust, but if you had to say one of these quarterbacks has a chance to be a bust, which one of the 5 would be your bust?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Which one of the 5 would be my bust? I would probably lean towards Mac or towards Trey Lance. And that's only a slight lean. I really don't think that these guys really have much of a bust factor. I think the interesting thing about Trey Lance and probably why I lean the most towards Trey is you're a high risk, high reward with Trey Lance. And I understand that, taking a guy that hasn't played quarterback his entire life and a guy that really has only played 1 full year of quarterback as a starter. Now, played at a very high level, didn't make a single mistake as far as turning the ball over. Mm-hmm. That scares a lot of people, and it scares this franchise, the fans of this franchise, more so than anybody, because look what we just went through with Mitch. But I also think that if you dig into the chemical makeup of that kid, how much of a film junk he is, he comes from a football family. It's in his blood, and you look at the physical traits on him. Being 6'4" and 210, 220 pounds, he's probably going to run somewhere in the 4.5s. When he does get out in the open field, he's magical. He is, Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick like magical with the ball in his hands as a tailback, effectively. But again, I mean, the thing that you're scared about is that, he only played 1 year of football. He's probably still developing. The past 2 North Dakota State quarterbacks haven't exactly lit it up in the league. Carson Wentz had that 1 great year, and that's what he's making his money on. That's what he's got an entire, sort of like brand on, is that 1 year when he could have been the MVP before going out with that injury. But I think, just to put an answer on it, Trey Lance is probably the one I lean the most towards. But again, I think he's got so much, stuff to him that, the bust risk on him is still extremely low.
Yeah, me too. And this question is posed to me, and I think I went with Lance right away because, like I said, it's the 1 year starting. It was a tremendous year stat wise, but it was an FCS competition. And the whole Carson Wentz thing, I don't buy. I heard this guy is as much better football character than Carson Wentz had coming out of North Dakota. So I think this guy probably has. I can't guess, right? I think he has more passion for the game than Carson Wentz does. So that's why, but it's the 1 year starting factor at a lower level competition is what kind of scares me. And a lot of people are always pointing the finger at Justin Fields. And I'm like, listen, if you all think Justin Fields is going to be a bust, you go ahead and think about it. That's the one kid that him, Trevor Lawrence are one of, and Mac Jones are probably the three guys that I feel more comfortable with. If the Bears end up with any one of those three, obviously not going to get Trevor Lawrence, but end up with a Justin Fields or a Mac Jones, I'll be highlighted. I'll be delighted. And Zach Wilson too. I love his skill set. I just want to see it do it against better competition. That's all.
Yeah. Factor threw up there, like over evaluating athleticism. That comment right there. Yeah, 100%. I get that, and that's not what I'm saying. I think to touch on what Danny said though is if you talk to anybody in the league and say what do you love about Lance, I think the first couple things that I got was just his mental makeup. I think the first couple times when I listened to people talk about Carson Wentz, they talked about his arm talent. The first things that people talked about when they said Easton Stick. Oh, he's a diamond in the rough. He's a dark horse. He's got great leadership. That's fine and everything, but the things that people talk about Trey Lance when you first hear them talk about Trey Lance is just his mental makeup as far as his understanding of the game and how much he's grown and just being a true film junkie, quarterback till I die type of dude. And I think that's why he's been successful, is because he is the dude that's first in the building, the last one to leave, and pulling guys with him into the film room and being that guy that you want to be your field general, knowing the playbook, backwards and forwards, and being able to make calls on the field if he has to.
That the whole did not play a lot of college football is a concerning aspect. To me, that's been true for decades, but I'm starting to feel that that's not as important anymore as it used to be. And as long as a quarterback like a Trey Lance lands with a coach and a coaching staff that knows how to utilize his strengths, lands with a team that has the complementary players around him, that everything is kind of set up for success, as opposed to drafting a guy like that and then throwing him to the wolves without, good scheme, without a good offensive line, without receivers that can make tough catches and stuff. Then, but to me, it's not as much as a deal breaker as it used to be. That was one of the reasons I didn't like Mitch Trubisky, was because he had that 1 year starting at 13 college starts. And then looking at the tape, that hip going wide and passes being off the mark, but getting away with them in college because of college defenses. So my point again is, I'm not too much worried about Trey Lance's lack of starts at the college level. The competition, now that is an issue, the competition that he has faced, but we'll see what happens. All right, let us move on. I have one other thing to play here. Oh, it was Matt Nagy talking about the role that Mike Pettin has now with the Chicago Bears defense. And then he also brings up the offensive coordinator, Herman. What's his first name, Danny?
Tom Herman.
Tom Herman. So let's listen to Matt Nagy talk about what responsibilities these guys are going to have.
What I thought was beautiful about our conversations, the three of us, was that there's just zero egos involved the whole way through. And so Coach Pettin is really here for a sounding board for Sean, and for him to be able to maybe ask questions when he has an idea or a thought or confirmation. Also, at the same time, being able to work ahead of time and help out, whether it's with the offense or the defense. But when you have smart people in your building that you feel like can help out, and you don't have people that are in positions where they have an ego or they're a threat or it's just not good. It's unhealthy. We don't want that. And that's that's what I'm so looking forward to seeing, how that thing blends together. And then the same thing with Tom Herman. Here's a guy that has had a lot of success in his career, worked his way up in the college ranks, the whole way up to very successful head coach, and has done it at the highest level. And a guy that, we've discussed together, the conversations we've had with myself, with Bill Lazor, with Coach Flip, of just where is he at and what is his why coming into this league. He's never been a part of this. And I think just as much as he can help us out in similar things on offense, like Coach Pettin will for the defense, they can cross over, right? And Tom Herman can be a help to Sean Desai, and Pettin can be a help to us.
Everyone has been critical of, well, you got a guy looking over Sean Desai's shoulder. You got Herman, another voice in that crowded offensive coach room. I actually think that there might be a lot of value in bringing these guys in, particularly over the next couple of weeks, when they have got to look at all this tape of all these free agents that are going to be a part of this bloodbath. Having Mike Pettin's opinion about defensive players who are now out there and available to potentially be signed by the Bears, I think that's going to be great. Having Herman around to evaluate the receivers and guys who can potentially help the passing game, because the Chicago Bears only have one reliable wide receiver on the roster, and that's Darnell Mooney. And a lot of people, Brad Biggs was saying on his podcast today that Darnell Mooney would be the fourth wide receiver on most rosters right now. I'm not sure I believe that, but there are problems. We need to acquire more depth at wide receiver, offensive line, and so forth. And so with this onslaught of free agents that's coming, Pettin and Herman could potentially help in evaluating players and making quick decisions on making offers to some of these guys. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, I have two different opinions on either gentleman. So for Pettin, I think it's just like you said, a sounding board for Desai, a young coordinator who hasn't been through the whole rigors, if you will, of a defensive coordinator putting up a game plan together and all that stuff. I think Pettin will be a nice, valuable asset in terms of helping him put together a game plan week in and week out. Maybe he'll find a role for a player where you can use him in this week's game that you might not typically use him in a particular role. So I think that's where Pettin comes in, just trying to kind of encourage and help Sean Desai, because I think that's where that's where they went, and I think that's what they want to see. Obviously, Desai go ahead and succeed. With Herman, his hiring was a little caught me off guard, right? It was a little strange. Initially I got all excited. I'm like, oh, they might draft Sam Ehlinger, but then although you quickly threw water on that fire with that little article. But anyway, no, but seriously,
for the people who don't know, there is a report that Sam Ehlinger, the quarterback out of Texas, was unhappy with Herman after a game and was critical about him. But a lot of people have thrown water on that report too. So I'm not going to say that was a confirmed report. So, but please go ahead. But
the whole Ehlinger coming to Chicago was just a tongue in cheek, really. I wasn't being serious about that. But I think where Herman can help the Bears is with this no combine, no sitting down, no bringing in these players for this, these 30 visits and getting to know these guys personally. Herman has probably tried to recruit a ton of these players that are going to be available in this class, right? So I think he might have some background and stuff that he could help the Bears in terms of filling in some holes and something like that, as well as offer some ideas in terms of adding some different wrinkles to the offense to make it a little bit more multi-layer, a little bit more deceptive in terms of the way it attacks defenses. So, but I think that's the kind of role that they envision Herman in. It is he gives them some of that background information that they don't have a chance to have this year with these prospects. Yeah, they can have the Zoom meetings and all that stuff, but it's knowing their background and some of this stuff and I think that's where it's going to help them, and it's also going to help them add in some different wrinkles to the offense.
Yeah, that's pretty massive. Him knowing a lot of these players' families, their stories, where they came from, all that background stuff. That's a lot of that stuff's critical, and a lot of stuff ends up being hush hush. Yep. When some of these scouts go into some of these offices and want to keep everything close to the vest, you don't get the full story on a lot of these guys coming out. And for some of these guys that may have some baggage, may have some ghosts, may have some skeletons, some moving pieces and stories and everything else, I think, Herman would be interesting to have him there. The trend that's sort of taking over college football right now, and it looks like it's taking over NFL as well, is that if there's a head coach or a coordinator that's just recently been let go or left somewhere, that, hey, let's just get him on staff and use his intelligence for the X number of time that we have him here. And I'm never going to be, against getting more intelligent people in the room. The more football knowledge, the more opinions that, from guys that have won before that you can get in the room, I think a lot of times the better. And in this case, bringing Pettin in, to sort of fade Desai and getting this defense together, I think is phenomenal. It's because of how long Pettin has been doing it and the intel that you get inside what's going on in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's massive. Yep. And so I think, again, the whole sounding board thing, Desai being able to go ahead and say, well, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about if we did this, as opposed to, and Pettin can go ahead and, steer him on course and get him right. I think those are two good hires. I don't think that Herman's going to last on the staff. I think it's just a place, holding for when he finally gets another opportunity to be a head coach somewhere in Division I college football. But the whole Pettin thing, I hope he sticks around for a while, at least through next season, because that could be critically valuable once we get to Green Bay week. Right.
The other thing regarding their value is like I said earlier, in evaluating tape and the fact that there's no combine. I think his first name is Mike Tenenbaum. He works over at ESPN now, former general manager, I believe, with the Giants. He posted this on his Twitter account. He says that because there's no combine this year, it's a concern because typically the discrepancies between the metrics acquired at the pro day are so different from the combine averages. Look at the 40-yard dash. On average, the 40-yard dash is run at a 4.72 with the timings they get at pro days. At the combine, which is much more controlled environment, it's 4.8. The vertical jump, 32.59 on pro day, 31.57 at the combine. The broad jump, almost 2 feet, definitely 2 feet more at pro days than at combines. The shuttle, about the same. The 3-cone. So the point being here is that the pro day is not going to have that super controlled environment to get the metrics that scouts love to pour over. And so that is going to mean that these guys have to do a great job at looking at tape, at making phone calls, getting information on these players more than ever before in the history of the draft. It is much more important to do it this year. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah, of course. You always got to rely on the tape. The one disadvantage, or actually, I should go back to that graph you showed there, because why that discrepancy is there is because the guys at their pro days, they're in their comfortable environments. They're in their areas, or whether it's fields or whether it's training facilities that they've been practicing in. They're used to it. At the combine, they typically wake them up early in the morning to go get their physicals, whether it's 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, to go get prodded, and poked by doctors. And then they're shuffled over to the stadium to go ahead and get prepared for their particular drills, for that group set. So, it's a whole process, right? They're out of their elements. They're uncomfortable all day long. Probably, you've heard some stories where some of these players get into it with the doctors and the nurses that they go at the hospitals with, because they're just uncomfortable and they're just irritated, they're agitated, and it's uncomfortable. And so that's why I think at the pro days they're more comfortable and they perform better. But I'll go back to your other question in terms of this year. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's going to happen this year is, like, typically, if someone performs well at the combine, you're like, oh wow, this guy's a better athlete. I mean, I should go back and rewatch his tape. That's going to be missing this year, right? Mm-hmm. Unless some kid blows you away at the pro day and then you go back and rewatch the tape. But typically, for me, it's always what the tape tells you. A guy can run a 4.3 240 at the combine, but I put on his tape and in full pads he's running a 4.5 to me, to my estimate, and then that's why I put him on. I put him on as a 4.5 because that's what you're gonna base him on Sundays is with fully padded, with the helmet on and all that stuff on, and that's how he's gonna run. So, it's always nice when a player matches his testing numbers match what you see on tape. That's always an easy scouting assessment. It's where you see a big discrepancy. You got to go back and say, all right, did I miss anything here? Is it just this guy's been well trained for this particular event, and he's just lost some weight and he's getting faster and all that stuff. So that I think that element's going to be missing this year.
I think the operative word there, or the key word there, is controlled environment. That's why I've been so critical about it. Is because, if you're talking about experimentation, we all three of us were in chemistry class at one point. When you're into experimentation, you got to have a constant, you got to have a variable. The constant was the field. The constant was Lucas Oil Stadium. The constant was one doctor, on site. The constant was, the process, and the variables were the kids. and they run the drills, and they do the testing all at one time, and you don't invite margin of error into the whole process. And I think that's where you're going to have a lot of asterisks going forward with all these pro days. And Danny touched on it, specifically on how kids are much more comfortable in their home environments, and 100%, and especially if you're running around on your turf, and how that turf acts. And if there's one dead spot right there, I got to avoid the 25-yard line just past the hash, so I don't trip and fall, or so I don't slow myself down or something. That's the things that really drive me crazy. Especially after going through a whole football season and a Super Bowl and everything else, and now all of a sudden we have to move the NFL Combine to a virtual remote version of what it could potentially be otherwise. Is it pissing a lot of front office people off? I would say yes and no. I think ultimately when it comes down to it, as a scout, you always got to trust your evaluation. That starts with the tape. And I always talk about combines, and especially when I was at Mississippi State and Northwestern and Ball State camps and clinics and all these different types of things that kids go to. I think the most important thing is always trusting your evaluation. That starts with the tape, because I think all these combines and camps and clinics and everything else, when it comes down to those things, those are always for affirmation, not confirmation. I look at the tape as my confirmation that the kid can play or not. And if he happens to run like a really fast time, like, oh, well, look at that. He had a really good day running, or holy hell, he jumped really high. I could see that on tape. Like, he shows instances of himself doing that on tape, high pointing the football, wherever the case may be, and go on and on. But I think that what you miss out of all of this is a very efficient way of doing things. I think what you're doing is just being a pain in the ass every front office in the NFL right now, because every single team has to do every single kid, every single different location where they're going to be practicing at. Doctors have to do remote medicals, and you're doing all these meetings via Zoom, which is the most impersonal way to do things when you're trying to interview somebody for a job, especially one where you're going to be paying multiple millions of dollars.
Right.
And so I think from an efficiency standpoint, that's what it hurts the most. It isn't that, we're not going to have, a standard of timing and testing, which, yeah, you'd really like to have that. And I've been extremely critical of that, because I'm sort of like a mathematician with the way I think a lot of times. And I want constants with my numbers. I want everybody running on the same track with the same variables and the same elements and dealing with the same bullshit. And then you see like who stacks up against each other, especially when you're doing the one-on-ones and the team specific activities and everything else. You see people separate. And I think a lot of times that's why the Senior Bowl is so great. And every time that I go down to the Senior Bowl, I see guys separate themselves. Montez Sweat had an amazing offseason a couple years ago. He separated himself from some of these other guys that he may or may not have been, kind of like, mumbled in with over the course of the evaluation season. And I think that what I mean in terms of separating yourself, not only is it in the way that you perform, but it's the way you carry yourself, your on-field demeanor, or your off-field demeanor for that matter. When you're in the film room or on the board, or you're dealing with the doctors or whatever the case may be, you go through the laundry list of stuff that they do on that itinerary, right? Mm-hmm. You eliminate the ability to see guys separate themselves. Who has the alpha personality, who can take over a drill, who can take over a timing period. And a lot of times those end up being guys that could take over games. And so, I keep saying I've been critical of the decision. I am. I've been vocal on it enough. But I think what you'll get is you'll have a lot of testing numbers being more visible from pro days than you'll ever have before. Not that they weren't hidden before, but everyone took the NFL, the scouting combine as gospel, and you should, for all the reasons that I just rambled on about. You just hope that this is just a one-time thing, and it probably is. But the way the NFL is, they start experimenting with stuff, and all of a sudden, oh hey, this is a pretty cool way to do things. No, get everybody back in Indianapolis next year and make it and keep it normal.
Yeah, I think that real quickly, I think the owners will say, hey, we saved a lot of money doing it this way. But I think
they're making enough money. They can afford to send a few people on planes and get to Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think coaches will complain and say, no, we need the combine. Go ahead, Danny.
I've been down to the combine. I've covered it a couple years in a row. And you see these guys before they're testing, and you can see they're uptight. They're nervous. They've this is like a big, interview process for them. And they know of especially if they heard someone in the early first group ran a 4.3 and and then now they have to try and top that, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So I think that a lot of that stuff happens. And the flip side, one guy might say, oh, you know what? I'm not gonna run today, but oh wait, this guy in my group ran a 4.3. I can beat that. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna compete. So you see some competitive juices flowing as well. So I think Neil's right. I mean, this was I think it was a mistake for them not to do the combine, at least hold off on canceling it and having something, like now everything's kind of opening up a little bit. So you probably could have held something like this, but whatever. I think it's just a 1-year thing. And I think it's just a big moneymaker too, in terms of TV coverage and all that stuff. So I think for sure it's got to come back.
Yeah.
You got the entire NCAA tournament being held in the city of Indianapolis and surrounding, arenas. I think we would have been okay with having a combine in one location.
Exactly.
Yeah. And all they had to do was make a couple of small adjustments, and it could have easily been held. I mean, you're talking about an event where, for the most part, it looks like everybody's social distancing anyway,
Right.
From the drills that are being held, players are over here, over there, over there. There aren't that many people in the building. They don't allow fans in the building. So the risk involved was minuscule.
Right.
And if they could play an entire NFL football season and travel to 32 different cities, the fact that they couldn't collect 200-300 players, bring them down to Indianapolis at a secure hotel, have them there for a week, and then bring them on to the combine it's really stupid that they didn't do it. Really stupid.
If Jim Nagy can pull off a Senior Bowl, right? And when you guys are practicing against each other, these guys are practicing each other day in and day out, right? If he can do that, and down in Mobile, you can do that in Indianapolis. And like I said, you fly in a position group, 2 at a time, however you want to plan it, where there's no mingling and all that stuff, and you test them, and then you go out there, they do their test, and they're off, they're gone the next day. So I think they just missed the boat on this one.
Hey guys, we're talking about the most full contact sport in the history of the world.
That's right.
Social guys spend 3 hours a day in tackling each other and huddling up with each other and just in close quarters. I mean, I just don't understand any of that. It drives me crazy.
Okay, let's move on to discussion now to the main feature of the show. This is where Danny and Neil are going to talk about their top tight ends for this upcoming 2021 draft. We've got both of their lists side by side here, and so we're going to do just like we did last week. I thought it went really well when the guys compared their lists for the wide receivers, and so we're going to do that. We're going to hear from the guys, talk about what these guys can do in terms of what their hands will look like, what are their run, how good are they at running after the catch, their coverage recognition, their ability to separate, and so many other things that we need to know. Now, the consensus number one tight end on everybody's board, I don't think that there's anyone in the entire planet Earth that does not have Kyle Pitts as number one. I want Danny to start first, because when we get to number two, there's a big disagreement here. And so I want Neil to start off with number two. So, Danny, why don't you start off talking to us about Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, this guy's super talented. I mean, for me personally, he's probably the best prospect I've seen at this position come on in recent memory. So just a terrific athlete. Back in high school, this guy played both sides of the ball, defensive end and tight end. A 2020 consensus All-American, the John Mackey Award winner, a 2-year starter, finished his collegiate career by setting single-season school touchdown records at Florida with 12. So you put on the tape, right away you see it. Terrific size with long arms, providing that huge target with a big, catch radius. Terrific balance and body control to help him make acrobatic catches downfield. Just an easy mover in space with feet, quickness of a wide receiver, right? It can line up all over the formation, whether it's in line as a wide tight end, outside the numbers, in the slot, or even off tackle. Suction cup for hands, guys. This guy catches naturally, extends outside his frame, can easily make difficult catches. He tracks the ball well over his shoulder and catches in stride and through contact. He can climb the ladder in the red zone and pluck the ball literally off the top of a defender's head, or he can go up in between two defenders because of his big catch radius, his long arms, and his height, and still make the catch. Just a big-time red zone target, this guy is. In terms of his separation, he's got a solid quick release off the line of scrimmage, quick feet at the top of his stem. He can sink his hips and accelerate to create that separation that's needed, can get downfield and threaten the seam. He's got that second gear that allows him to pull away from defenders in coverage. He's competitive after the catch. He's got a strong stiff arm. You can shove would-be tacklers to the ground. has a good feel for coverage and finding soft spots in the zones, and does a nice job of sitting and giving his quarterback a nice big target to throw at. Uses his size and his arms when he's being pressed at the line of scrimmage to go ahead and fight through physical coverage, and he can uncover. I was watching him versus South Carolina, and they put J.C. Horn on him, their top corner, and one of the top corners in his entire draft on him just to cover him, and he will still be able to make catches on J.C. Horn. He creates mismatches in the slot. His length and his speed, linebackers can't keep up with him in coverage. But the one thing that really shocked me, I knew he was talented in terms of as a pass catcher, but his blocking, he's a solid blocker. Now, this guy will lock on with his hands. He'll extend his arms. He'll run his feet. He'll create space, and he'll sustain his blocks. He takes solid angles, and is an efficient mover and move blocker, I should say. So, he's a guy that, I initially just thought was going to be a split out, tight end, but this guy can play the wide at the next level. He, to me, is a complete tight end right now. Can he get better in terms of being a better blocker overall? Sure. The only negative I put on him, guys, is just size. I think he's got a little bit of a skinny frame, could add a little more muscle, just get more stronger. But that's it. And that's being nitpicky right there. But one of the better tight end prospects I've seen come on the last couple of years.
Yeah, 100%. The size thing, it was actually funny because I was thinking the same thing. I didn't think he was that big. I didn't think he was 6'6", 246. You look at him on film, you think he's probably 6'4", 230. At least that's what I thought. 6'6", 246 might end up being a little bit ambitious. We know Florida likes to goose their numbers a little bit, but the thing about him is that he's probably not probably, he is the only guy on this list that a lot of teams will have both on the board at receiver and at tight end. This guy, I think, does have a lot of natural wide receiver tendencies that makes him absurdly dangerous. When he's playing that F position. And then, you see him at Florida in the H-back spot where, your responsibilities involve blocking assignments and going, neck to neck with, linebackers and defensive ends at times and even kind of transitioning into a tailback with that goofy low shovel pass that they like to do that they ran so effectively with guys like Aaron Hernandez. Mm-hmm. This guy is just like, the perfect everything that Dan Mullen wanted down there at Florida. I was actually, kind of a little bit less excited about him as a blocker than you were, Danny, just because I didn't think he really dominated necessarily. I think it was more like, he just kind of got in the way a lot of times. I like to see him be more physical and drive and move more people. But, again, I think that his involvement on run plays a lot of times is really kind of strictly kind of like psychological warfare because that you have this dangerous offensive weaponry in the backfield there, whether he's lining up in line or whether he's in the backfield as the H. And what are they going to do with him? And so it really creates a lot of consternation a little bit from a defensive coordinator standpoint, trying to plan around what they could possibly be doing with Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to bring that to the league as well. I think all his deficiencies are really all coachable stuff. He can tighten up his route running. He can be a little bit more physical as a blocker. I think he's going to have to put on a little bit more mass because, Danny touched on that tiny frame he's got. He's going to benefit from NFL coaching at the next level, improving his strength and physicality and all those types of things. But, I think it's pretty easy to say that this dude is, easily one of the best, prospects from a tight end standpoint that we've had in a long time. And, I don't think it's even close. I think, when you talk about this class, you got Kyle Pitts. And then, at least for me, I got 5 guys. And then there's another big line, and then there's everybody else.
So the big question in the chat room is, do you take him at 20? And Danny, that was a question you posed a few weeks ago when we were talking about tight ends that you would take him at 20. So
my thing, a couple of things. First of all, I don't think he'll be there at 20. But if say all the quarterbacks are gone and he's there at 20 by some miracle, yeah, I'm all over him because I think because he could be multifunctional in terms of your offense. You could split them out wide by the numbers. You can put them in the slot. You can line up, as a 2 tight end set next to Cole Kmet. I think he'd complement nicely with what Cole Kmet does, right? So I think Cole Kmet is strictly a Y inline tight end, but I think this guy can give you more of that move or what Nagy calls the U tight end in his offense. So just a playmaker down the field, and that speed element. Whether he runs a 4.5 or 4.6. This guy, even if he's covered, this guy's open because of his ability. his huge catch radius, his long arms, his height, and ability to go up and make a high point the ball and come down with it. So even if he's blocked, even if he's covered, he's open, in my opinion.
Tony thinks that even if he's over. Even if he's open, Mitch will overthrow him. All right. Enough fun and games. Let us move on to the next player on this list. This is all you, Mr. Neil Stopchinski. It is a guy that I love too, Tommy Tremble out of Notre Dame. What do you think about him? Give us your evaluation, and then we'll find out from Danny why he's got him at number 8.
Yeah, no, Danny's gonna give me a ration of hell about this. Call me a homer and I'm biased and all this other garbage. You know, go suck it, Danny. No, but listen, like in all seriousness though, like him and Brevin Jordan, I went back and forth with. Those were interchangeably 2 and 3 and 3 and 2 to me. The thing I love about the modern day tight end guys is that if you have a guy that's versatile enough to do all three, he is a very dangerous weapon. And when I was talking about Kyle Pitts, how it creates a lot of tight bungholes, trying to figure out how to deal with Kyle Pitts. The basis of that is that when you play your base, or do you go to a 4-3? Do you go to a 3-4? How do you account for wherever this guy's going to line up? Because if he's in an H-back position where he's just a little bit off the line, he's technically in the backfield. So that messes with your numbers. If he's an inline tight end, this guy is also athletic enough to beat your linebackers and strong enough to deal with your defensive ends. If he flexes out into the F, he's effectively a big wide receiver at that point, which creates a whole another level of mismatches. So like it messes with your alignment, it messes with your defensive calls. I think that at the H-back position, which is kind of like what you can call it loosely these days, but I mean ultimately, like again, if you have a tight end that could do all three, be the H, be the Y, and be the F, it really creates a whole host of problems. And that's why I think that Brevin Jordan and Tommy Tremble are that dangerous like type of guy. That's why I have them this high. Again, interchangeably at 2 and 3 with Tommy. I think that, he does a lot of things that Brevin Jordan can do, but he just loves putting guys in the dirt. This is a kid that doesn't have a whole lot of production, but, with that offense at Notre Dame, they don't throw the ball over the field. They don't necessarily have the quarterback to be able to do that. He's only got 35 catches for 401 yards and 4 career touchdowns. That's over 2 seasons. But, you love his build, his athletic ability. I think his testing numbers are going to open some eyeballs. And he's got the toughness and the physicality. ND guys have that mean streak and that nastiness. You see on the offensive line. You saw with Cole Kmet. You see it with a couple of the offensive linemen we brought in from previous draft classes. Basically with Notre Dame, especially with that new strength coach that they brought in, Matt Bayless. If you're a point of contact guy, you play with an edge to you, and that's what he does. He loves to put guys on their ass. It takes a lot of pride in doing that. Again, I touched on Cole Kmet. He's like that, but he's more athletic. All right. He's very unique in his skill set. And in that way, he's kind of like Pitts and Jordan in a passing game. And then, also fierce in the blocking game. So he has athletic ability and the natural pass catching skill set, natural wide receiver skill set to be able to be functional in the passing game, very fierce in the blocking game, and, versatile in where he plays. He can perform anywhere from the H to the Y to the F and execute at a very high level. To me, he shows up on tape every game, whether it's in the blocking game or the passing game. He shows dexterity and body control. He's got the elements to be able to run with the ball after the catch, be a tailback, and also the yards after the catch as a receiver. Again, I talk about how Indy was a big time passing outfit. Ian Book was only in the teens in touchdowns on the year, and pass catchers in total were wildly productive. In that offense. Do what?
My bad. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, you put him in a pass-happy offense, I guarantee his numbers are going to be a hell of a lot higher, and this guy would rake. There's a part of me that feels like he should have gone back for one more year, to be honest with you. Am I happy that he's coming out? Yes, because I think that he's a guy that's going to have a really nice career, and he's going to make somebody very happy. I also think he stuck his name out to the committee, and he might have gotten a second-round grade. And if he didn't, I bet Brian Kelly did his due diligence to reach out, to the NFL guys that he trusts for opinion and to give Tommy advice. Hence the decision that he made. I feel like he's got enough evaluations off the record to be able to know that he made a good decision with what he decided to do. Now, had he gone back to school and Brevin Jordan left and Kyle Pitts left, could he have been the number one tight end with equally more productive a year? Jack Cohn coming in from Wisconsin, possibly. But he went ahead and decided to go ahead and not take the risk of coming back and the injury thing that kids are really scared about, and just put his name in the draft. He might have been the best all-around player next year. Who knows? But I think you're drafting high on upside and versatility. And the thing I love about this kid, you look at this kid talk, and the way that he gets into his responsibilities as a tight end, especially as a blocker. You know, that this one quote I pulled, he said, making a great block, moving one person from point A to point B is better, if not the same thing as scoring a touchdown for me. You know, I love doing that. You know what I mean? He's talking to the guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, who wants to play some real football, some smash mouth football? I love that. 100% until the whistle blows mentality. And that's why I love this kid. You know, he gives you all the athleticism. He gives you some of the wide receiver skill sets. He gives you the blocking component. He can play all three positions, the ultimate Swiss Army knife, in my opinion. And, he's just one of these guys on this list that has the kind of mentality, that old school smash you in the forehead mentality that you can't get with anybody else that we're going to talk about today.
I'm excited just like you are about him. And Blaine, I think his name is Blaine. Where'd he go on my list here? Blaine says, we don't need another tight end. Why are we talking about tight ends? Yes, we do need another tight end, particularly if Jimmy Graham is a victim of the salary cap. There's no, by the way, Jimmy Graham was involved in an auto accident today. The reports are that the car rolled over, but that he is fine. And so that's good to hear. But Jimmy Graham, I think it's a $6 or $7 million cap hit that can be eliminated by dropping Jimmy. My feeling is that they're probably going to renegotiate this contract, particularly if they're serious about trying to acquire Russell Wilson, because Jimmy has allegedly talked to Russell about the Bears and said, this is a great organization. You should be interested in coming here. So, but nonetheless, it might be necessary for the Chicago Bears to draft a tight end and to have two excellent tight ends. So have a complimentary tight end like Tommy Tremble and Cole Kmet, just like Neil just said. I would be excited about that. But I think Danny is less excited about that. Let's find out why.
Well, no, I'm excited by getting on the tight end because, I mean, you're right. The depth, even if they keep Jimmy Graham, who's the third tight end on the roster? Was it JP Holtz, who plays some fullback, some tight end? Correct. I know they got this, I think Eric Sobert's still on the either the practice squad or on the active roster, but there's a need there. You know, it might not be a top need, it might not be a second round need, for example, but it's going to be a need. So that's why for me, Tommy Tremble, I agree with some things that Neil said in terms of his ability to be a devastating blocker, whether it's a lead block or standing in line. We just saw a clip there where he pulled off and he trap blocked and he went ahead and he just annihilated the linebacker in the run fit there. So, you know, you love all the things about him. You talked about his athletic ability, you know, solid size, you know, displaying the good athletic traits. You know, he's got the athletic hips. He's got good contact power, contact balance. I love him in terms of after the catch. You know, he's got, you know, the physicalness to be able to run through defenders and all that stuff. So why do I have him 8th? Because I feel like the Bears need to bring an element of a dynamic element to complement Cole Kmet. Now, we're talking about with Trumbull, we're talking about projecting that he shows the athletic ability, he shows the ability to be a U or a move tight end. But I see him either as a H-back or as they had him lined up as a Y and end of the line, like in a 2 tight end set. I don't see him being dynamic after the catch. I don't see him with his elusiveness. You know, he catches the ball and he tries to power through a guy, and that was about it. His route running is adequate at best in terms of, you know, but again, that's things that could be coached up, it could be developed. I'm with you, Neil. I think he should have come back for another year, but like you said, he probably got second, third round grade. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and you know, my quarterback's leaving. I don't know what's going to be next year. Who knows? I'm going to go ahead and take my chances and go to the draft. So, but I think if he did come back, I think he'd be a higher rated, at least on my board, he'd be a higher rated prospect. So, you know, there are things I like about him, but I think as a compliment to Cole Kmet, I don't think he does that for me.
Let's take a look at a couple more of his blocks, because that to me is the most fun thing about this guy. The way he just annihilates people with his blocks. Here he is picking up a linebacker, and there he is. The arrow is on him again. Just if he's not pancaking guys, he's just stuck to them like Velcro, man. This guy is really fun to watch in the blocking game.
I think he can be that dynamic complement. I do. You know, there's times where you see him, you know, avoiding kids in the open field, or the Clemson game where he jumped over a guy. Tampa Bay just scored and won at the buzzer.
Oh no, 0 point.
Unbelievable. Anyways, but
he's got athletic traits, but I don't see him on his tape that doing anything dynamic down the field. That's what I don't see. I see him making catches. I see him running over guys with power and contact balance and all that stuff, but I don't see him making guys miss. I don't see him being a real threat down the field. And his stats prove it. He's only had 35 receptions for the last 2 seasons. So is there potential? Can you see something maybe with his athletic ability that he could probably develop into that? But but you're projecting, based off of limited production and something, what he puts on tape, blocking wise, I have no problem with him, but I just don't see that dynamic ability downfield yet.
Do you think he's going to be a 35, 4.014 guy with, someone other than Ian Book at quarterback? You think you put Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence back there, that he's going to be a 35, 4.01 and 4 guy?
Maybe not. Hopefully not. But I mean, I just don't see anything that makes me want to say, you know what, this guy is dynamic downfield in terms of a pass catcher. And again, that's where I'm looking. I'm looking at a complement to Cole Kmet. I'm not looking for someone that's sort of similar to Cole Kmet.
Well, that's an interesting dilemma. And when we get to the draft on draft week and Tommy is there available, let's say he's available in the second round, right? We're going to have some really table pounding discussions about that. And I'll be listening to these two guys go at it.
But I mean, that's the thing is like, second round pick, you kind of want to have someone that's going to be able to complement your current tight end, your current roster, give you some of that speed element, some of that possibilities. And as of right now, I just can't project Tommy Tremble in that. Could he develop into that? Sure, he could develop into that, but I just can't see it right, especially for a second round pick.
Interesting. All righty, let's move on now and let's look at who Danny had at number 2 and Neil had him at number 3. That's a kid from Miami, Brevin Jordan. Danny, take it away.
Yeah, Brevin Jordan, the kid from Miami, highly touted 5-star high school recruit, who chose Miami over teams like Florida, Florida State, Georgia. 3-year starter, 3-time All-ACC. This guy's a well-defined, rocked-up, athletic tight end. We talked about that U position in the Bears system. He's got that athletic frame with those long arms, loose hips. He's flexible, agile, and he's a fluid strider. Quick first step. Also possesses that short, area burst, acceleration, and downfield speed. Soft hands, possesses very good ball skills and body control to be able to track and adjust to the off-target and underthrown balls. Extends outside his frame and can snag the ball out of the air. Quick turning upfield after the catch, displaying his burst, acceleration, and ability to run away from linebackers. He's capable of stretching the field. He has that stop and start quicks. He's got the ability to jump cut in and out of a defender's arms. He's got that, what I talked about now, the excitement ability downfield after the catch to be able to make big plays. So this is why I like them a lot more than some of the other guys that I was looking at. Willing blocker, not great. He's a willing blocker. He'll engage. He'll keep his feet churning on contact. He gives effort, right? He tries, but his moneymaker is going to be making big plays downfield. And again, this is a guy I believe he's got some long arms. I don't have his numbers, but he looks like he's got at least 33-inch arms. I don't know if you have his numbers there, Neil, but I
agree with you.
Yeah, he's got. He extends, catches nicely away from his body, goes over the middle. Again, brings that element, that speed, that big play dynamic downfield that I think the Bears need. That will be a nice kind of compliment to Cole Kmet.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I had both of these guys. I was going back and forth with them, as I was, making these rankings, creating these spots. I was going back and forth. To me, like he's got comparable athletic ability to Pitts. Probably the most questionable size of the three, just if you look at his body type. But again, he's got length in his limbs that makes up for it, and you love that because he's a guy that he lines up in more spots than Pitts did. He kind of lined up in a very similar way that they had Tommy Tremble. He was in the H position a lot. He was at the Y a lot. They had him flexed out to the F. I just love his mobility, his ability to execute in the blocking game. Much more than Pitts, though, if you're comparing the two. I thought he was tough and physical. He goes hard. He drives DBs down the field. He often has D lineman as his blocking assignment. He competes his ass off. You touched on his route running stuff. You don't really need to go into detail about that. But as far as like his ability to run routes and his athletic ability, finding the pockets, getting open, all those types of things. There's times I feel like, he has a couple bad drops. He attempts to cradle too many passes. He could have better hands at times, but like with some of those guys we talked about last week, those are things I just noticed. I wouldn't have logged those as tendencies. I think he's going to be a tremendous value on day 2 as a Pitts-like dude without just the dynamic things that you get with Kyle Pitts, if that makes sense. His tenacity and toughness in the passing game is a massive plus considering his size. I think the H-back role over the past 5 years has become critical, and in offensive weaponry, I think he fits this in the NFL game to a T. He gives you a lot of options.
All right, let's move on now to the guy that is third on Danny's list, fourth on Neil's list. Neil, why don't you take this away? It's Pat Freiermuth of Penn State.
Yeah, Pat Freiermuth.
Excuse me.
Right, yeah. So Pat Freiermuth, another one of those guys that they call Baby Gronk at the college level. I think there's 35 of those at the college level right now, Baby Gronks. Pretty comparable. They have him listed on the roster 6'5", 6050, 258. A lot of experience, this kid. 30 games played, 26 of those starts. Two-time team captain, so he brings leadership to the table, the intangibles. He's got the record for career touchdown catches at the tight end position at State Penn. So, Big Ten, tight end of the year. He's got the accolades, all these types of things. He played 4 games in 2020, had a season-ending, injury. I believe it was a shoulder. Had a surgery at the very tail end of November. It was after Thanksgiving. And so where he is with that, I think, is going to, really determine at what point on day 2 that he goes. I still think he's a day 2 guy. I think that surgery can, be, massaged back into good form. And so I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue as it would have been if it was a knee. However, kind of like Jordan, he lines up everywhere on the field, like Jordan and Tommy and, all these guys we talked about. He lines up everywhere on the field from H to Y to F. He's got the size you love, exceptional hands. He's very natural in the passing game. He's very smart in the way that he works. The way he runs his routes, being able to manipulate defenders to create separation that way. I don't think he's as fluid of an athlete as these guys. I think athletic ability wise, if you're comparing them to these other 3 guys we talked about already, kind of average. But he's very crafty in the way that he gets himself open. He'll jab step or sell a route off. He's got a little bit of gamesmanship in that way. How he navigates traffic, playing the angles, finding the holes, positioning his body. And that works also along with the field awareness you see with this kid in the way that he sort of just, matriculates his way, through the defense. Many times he kind of looks like he's a step ahead, bracing for a hit or making a move, avoiding defenders, tracking a ball as he moves, kind of has a sixth sense. If you know what I mean. So, I mean, he really does a good job of knowing what's going on around him at all times. I felt like for his size could have been more physical in the blocking game or after the catch for that matter. We talk about Cole Kmet loves to crush oppositions at every opportunity. I don't necessarily see that from him. He has a strength to be productive as a blocker, but you just don't. You never see this guy get pushed around or giving up space, but you don't necessarily see him driving guys into the dirt either. And I wish that he just had a little bit more nasty about him. I think he's not really going to blow you away with his numbers. Doing the Underwear Olympics thing in testing. He does need a prop. He does need a prop to change direction at times. But he intangibly brings a lot to the table, from intelligence to instincts, competitiveness. As a GM, I want to know what's going on with the shoulder, just me specifically, and why it was kind of odd the way that I think last week we were talking about Barroom, not really wanting to talk about why Rondell Moore wasn't playing and was kind of dancing around the situation and stuff. Franklin was doing the same thing this year, which kind of gave me a little bit of a weird vibe when I talk about it. But the kid did play 2 games with a busted shoulder, so the toughness is there. And so it shouldn't be a question. I just wish some of these coaches would be more transparent about this kind of stuff. But I really like the kid. I think he's a round 3 guy. Coming out of shoulder surgery, knowing that he's going to need a little bit of therapy to get that thing back to full strength. But once he is, he's going to be a really productive dude. I see a longevity with this guy as well.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, Neil touched on some of the stuff that I liked about him as well. You touched on the 2-time team captain, but he's also a captain in high school as well. So obviously, this guy's exudes leadership, on both high school and college level. Finished his career catching a pass in 29 straight games, which is a school record at Penn State. So, a lot of the stuff that Neil talked about, I have here as his strengths as well. His tough, scrappy competitor. This guy is willing to go across the middle and catch on contact. He's a guy that's can get upfield one-on-one coverage from a linebacker. It does a nice job of separating on those short to intermediate routes. I'm talking about, slants, those out routes. Typically he's always running and he's getting open. Does a nice job of using that length nicely to create the separation at the top of his stem to be able to get open on those particular routes. So yeah, a lot of things that Neil touched on, I have here as positive as well. Some of the things that in terms of what bother me or concern me, I should say, is he's not really a dynamic downfield seam stretcher, right? He's a guy he lacks that top end speed, that elusiveness to maximize yak after the catch. So it's some of the things that he's not explosive off the line of scrimmage for me. Again, I was looking for a nice compliment for Cole Kmet. I was looking for a really explosive tight end to kind of complement Kmet, and I just some of the things that he does are real nice. But some of the areas in which I wanted to kind of prop him up more, he doesn't really hit him for me. So that's why he's third on my list. And I agree, he's also a third round pick.
Yeah, I just saw that massive drop off with athleticism once you got past guys like Pitts and Brevin Jordan and Tommy Tremble. Like, to me, it was athletic dude, like super athletic dude, pretty athletic dude, and then you got this guy. And I mean and again, it's not, you're not trying to bag on the kid or anything like that, because you're comparing him to borderline freak athletes. But I think that if he was a first kid on the list, you start comparing other guys like further on down to this kid. You think, oh wow, that kid's really athletic. It's all relative. But at the same time, I think that I think we're on the same page with the overriding point is that in terms of compliments, he's probably a little bit more of what we already have, more so than a compliment.
Sounds fair. Good analysis, guys. All right, let's go to Danny's number 4. It's Hunter Long from Boston College. What do you like about Hunter?
Yeah, Hunter Long was down at the Senior Bowl, and I was really looking forward to seeing what he did, and he didn't stick out for me. I don't know about you guys, but he really didn't do anything to stick out for me. But going over his tape, he's a 2-year starter. He led the nation last year in receptions for a tight end in 2020. He's got a solid athletic frame. He's got room to add more muscle, so he's not maxed out yet. Possesses good size with long arms. He's got a solid get off at the line of scrimmage with some deceptive long strides that eat up the cushion of a defender. So he makes up ground quickly and gets over that top leverage on the defender. He's solid hands. He'll looks the ball in nicely. Can make difficult grabs. With tight defensive coverage. What I like about him is there's a couple of clips where he saw his quarterback in trouble and he worked his way back to the quarterback. I like seeing my tight ends or receivers, see that the quarterback is in trouble and work their way back, cut off their route and come back to the quarterback. So that's something that I noticed on his tape as well. In terms of separation, he's physical at the top of his route. He uses his size again to his advantage. He understands body positioning and how to shield defenders from the ball. He has enough speed to threaten the field vertically. Again, he's not going to be a speed demon, but he does have enough speed to get down there, stretch the seam. Has a good feel for coverages. He knows where to settle in zone and give his quarterback a target to throw at. Another guy that lined up here at the Y, inline tight end, blocking tight end, and also flanked out as a slot receiver as well. So he's a guy that can line up in multiple positions on the formation. In terms of blocking, he's a solid base blocker. He moves his feet laterally, plays long, extends his arms, and he's functional at the second level, walling off that second level run fit. So he's not a dominator by any means, in terms of blocking, but he's functional there as well. So I think another kid that a little bit disappointed for me in terms of Senior Bowl week. I thought he was gonna do better. But when you put on his tape, he's a solid prospect. Again, not a guy that I'd say would be an ideal complement to a Cole Kmet.
Yeah, he's a classic Y to me, and that's exactly the note that I wrote down. I mean, I wrote down a lot of the same exact things, almost word for word that you said. I mean, this kid would have been a massive passing weapon 20 years ago. He would have almost redefined what tight ends were 20 years ago. I mean, as it is today, he's a classic Y. Another guy kind of similar in the mold of what we already have, except that, he's unfortunately a dude that, again, kind of like Freiermuth, he's not a dude that has any sort of nasty about him, but he's going to be consistently good. He's a guy that, he's going to smart player, going to find the holes similar to Freiermuth, like I mentioned again, but he's not a yak weapon. Some guys turn into tailbacks after the catch. He turns into a fullback. He doesn't have a whole lot of side to side shiftiness to him. Can't really make people miss. I do think he's a tough kid though. He could take hits. We saw on tape. I'm sure you saw it too, Dan. We saw on tape. This past year. Catching the ball in traffic, taking a shot. Yeah. Physical in the run game. But again, not a nasty guy. I'm not sure he's ever going to be anyone's number one, tight end. But I mean, he's going to be really reliable. He'll be a Nissan Maxima, not flashy. Take you on some long drives, give you 100K on the odometer. He's a throwback, fun to watch. The spirit of the neck roll, almost. That's kind of where I'm at on that.
All right, moving down our list here. At number 5, Neil had Hunter Long, and Danny's got Kenny Yeboah, Ole Miss. Danny, tell us about Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny Yeboah really surprised me. I didn't have him initially this high coming into, bring down the tape. But you dig into this kid. In high school in Pennsylvania, played wide receiver, defensive back, also punted and kicked. He led her twice in basketball, so he's a multi-sport athlete. Played at Temple from 2016 to 2019, where he played in 38 games with 11 starts. In 2020, last year, he transferred as a grad transfer to Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, had his best season stat-wise in his career, 27 receptions, 524 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaged 19.4 yards a catch. So solid size with excellent length, long arms. He's got 33-plus inch arm length. Can be a huge threat in terms of a target in the red zone. Possesses that good straight line speed. He looks like an oversized wide receiver, to be honest with you. Plays with body control and balance, can be seen where he contours and adjusts to throws downfield. You see some of that body control come into play there. Solid hands, can go up and snag the ball, extends outside his frame and makes difficult grabs, catches on contact and take a hit from a defender. Good functional speed to be able to threaten the seam and then run by defenders. So he can stretch the field vertically as well. In terms of route running, he's solid carrying his speed into his cuts, and he's creating slight separation on those out routes and slants, giving that quarterback a window to be able to throw the ball into. In terms of projecting at the next level, this is more of a guy I'm looking for in terms of being someone that gives you some of that big play ability downfield. Now, is he going to be a blocker? Is he be a guy that you're going to line up in line and block? No, you're not going to do that. Now there are some other things that kind of concern about him. He did show, I don't know if you saw that, he showed some stiffness, lower body stiffness, probably in his ankles. So he doesn't give you the all out freak athletic ability of a Brevin Jordan or of a Kyle Pitts, but he's got the size, the long arm, and he's got that straight line speed that he can be able to, like I said, threaten that seam and get downfield and big plays. And he catches on contact. And this is a guy that you put on Alabama tape, he's catching back shoulder throws. He's going up over defensive backs, making plays over them. But then the other thing is, that's, speaking of Alabama game, that's what really won his really big game last year. The other games he really didn't show up. He had a solid game against Florida, but I just want to see that production be more on a consistent basis. So you can see here he's running away from guys on Alabama. So he's got that big play potential. He needs some work. But again, these are the guys that I'm looking for, late day 2, early day 3, where you can bring him in and give you a nice compliment to Cole Kmet.
Excellent analysis, guys. Kenny Yeboah, what have you been hearing about him, Neil?
Well, I mean, I had him probably late day 3 for a lot of the reasons why you mentioned, Danny, as far as this kid's not a blocker at all. He's actually pretty terrible as a blocker. The stiffness drives me crazy. I don't think it's just in his ankles. I think it's all in his lower body, to be honest with you. The kid can't bend. You try to actually see him, put effort into a block, and he's standing straight upwards. He's athletic enough to only be taken as a weapon. He's kind of like a Diet Coke Kyle Pitts to me. So I, just 1 calorie, not Kyle Pitts enough. I mean,
the Bears, right? That's a nice compliment to what you got in Cole Kmet, I think.
If you're specifically looking for a guy that's going to, stretch the field and things like that, then yeah, maybe. But again, I mean, if I'm going to take a 6'4", 247 pound dude, I will at least want him to be able to, if I need him to put hats on somebody, he's not going to just let the guy lay him.
You can always make him a better blocker. You can always coach that up. You can't coach away the stiffness,
dude.
No, stiffness can't coach up, but you can always coach up to put a hat on a hat.
Yeah, you can, but the problem is that when he tries to put the hat on the hat, he ends up outlaying guys, and that's entirely the problem with me is that I can't depend on him to seal anything off or get in the way or allow a big play to spring forward. I mean, the trust factor there in terms of the blocking game is what kind of kills him for me because unlike you, where you were actually pleasantly surprised, I was extremely disappointed. I had him as potentially a day 2 guy. Just from the random, clips and things that I saw of him this year. I watched the Alabama game. He exploded in the Alabama game, had a really nice go of it there. And the other random games that, as a former SEC guy, you kind of pay attention to schools that you used to go up against. He would definitely flash, but I think that's kind of like where his ceiling is for me as a flash guy.
Right.
I'm not sure
he wasn't there. You're right. That's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see consistency because Alabama, he was the man, right? He 7 receptions, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns, big time plays, back shoulder throws, all this stuff. And then he's gone for the next game. And I think he had a big game against Florida, 91 yards or something like that. And that was it. I want to see that consistency from him. But Senior Bowl, he disappointed me as well. He didn't really do anything Senior Bowl that kind of showed out as well. So like I said, I have him as a day 3 guy right now. So I don't see him going, day 1 or day 2. So that's where I kind of, even though he's 5th on my list, he's day 3 for me. That's a big drop off from the first 2 guys for me.
You got him early day 3. I got him late day 3.
Yeah.
Neil, you said that after the top 5, that's kind of your dividing line, and so you have Pitts, Tremble, Jordan, Freiermuth, Hunter Long, and then now this is where your dividing line starts. Talk to me about number 6, Trey McKitty out of Georgia.
Yeah, these second 5 guys on this list to me it gets kind of interesting because you have guys that have traits and that show you some nice things and have a lot of pluses, but also guys that have a lot of negatives as well. Trey McKitty is a kid that I thought was really intriguing as a guy that only caught 6 balls all year, which I know that just optics wise that looks terrible. But he had 56 for 628 and 3 touchdowns over his entire career. He transferred in to Georgia from Florida State. Missed the first couple of games of the year this past year due to injury, but started the last 7 games. I think it was a minor injury as well. It wasn't anything that was going to require any sort of surgery or anything like that. But here's another guy that has absurd measurables. Just a touch over 6'4", 6'0", 247 pounds, 11-inch hands, massive paws on this kid, 32 and a quarter arms with an 81-inch wingspan. Length is this kid's deal. Massive hands, great lengths, and it's very evident on film too. You probably could guess those numbers if you're just watching the kid run around. He's another kid that presents a lot of good versatility. You had to watch a bunch of FSU film because, again, there wasn't really a whole lot of productivity at Georgia. Kind of drove me nuts a little bit. But if you watch his FSU film, he does have a lot of similar things to a lot of these other guys, in that he is very multiple. I don't think he's as athletic or dangerous in the passing game as some of these other dudes, but he does get his ass after his blocking assignments. He uses, pretty good technique. He understands the leverage. He has a strength to take on defensive ends as well. He gives great effort. And, he then goes ahead and, blocks downfield as well on that same token. I think it could have been used more in the passing game, made most of his opportunities. But you can tell he understands defenses. He finds open pockets. He can bring the ball in with ease with these massive paws that he's got. He's not a guy that's going to beat you in the open field or even stretch the field to me. He can be somewhat clunky with the ball in his hand in the way that he runs. I see him as a wide with flexibility. He gives you the options to be able to do some different types of things with him. I think more often than not, he's going to end up on the line. More of a classic tight end than the modern version that I talk about. But, he can function in the modern game, and he's not just a big stiff, The complete lack of production last year was odd. But as a guy that has the tools and is a developmental guy, I think he presents really good early day 3 value.
Yeah, for me too. I didn't watch any Georgia tape. All I watched was FSU tapes, and I watched him at the Senior Bowl practices, and he caught my eye at the Senior Bowl. To be honest with you, he's a guy that did impress me at the Senior Bowl. His ability, what impressed me down there was his ability to be able to separate from the one-on-one linebackers and those drills, be able to extend away from his body and make those catches. And we talked about those 11-inch hands, those big paws. There's times he made, reached up and made one-handed catches in practices as well. So You touch about a lot of the stuff, Neil, that I touched upon as well, or that I marked down as well. The one thing I do differ with you is I think he does have the speed to threaten downfield, to be a threat. I mean, he's not gonna run a 4 or 5 or anything like that, but I think he's got the ability to stretch the seam and one-on-one coverage with the linebacker, be able to get over the top leverage on him. At Florida State, you see him being used in the screen game. They dump him off, screens to him, and he's out there creating on his own behind the line of scrimmage. So I think he's got that type of ability as well. So that's what attracts me to him. We talked about the size, his hands, his ability to get downfield, be able to create after the catch. Again, heading into it with the mentality, I'm looking for a nice compliment to Cole Kmet. This is why I have this kid rated 6th overall.
Yeah, I was impressed with what I saw during the Senior Bowl week. Just like you said, Danny, he was escaping linebackers, getting downfields, and I just put up a replay of him making that one-handed grab. Boy, oh boy, those big hands could come in real handy in Chicago in a December game.
My thing is, how could you have this kid at Georgia and not utilize him at all?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
That blows my mind, to be honest with you. Like, Kirby, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing?
All right. Danny had Trey also at number 6. And here's another guy that caught my eye down at the Senior Bowl, the kid from Boise State, John Bates. Shimon, talk to us about Bates.
Yeah, you and I both, man. Bates caught my eye as well. And every time I looked up, there's this kid with a Boise State hat making a play downfield. And so you put on his tape and do some background search on him. He's a 3-star. It was a 3-star high school recruit. Earned all conference honors as a wide receiver, as a defensive back, and as a punter. Also lettered and competed in basketball. So this and also had track in his background as well. So this guy's a little sneaky athlete here. Very good size for with length. About 6'5", 259, 260 pounds, 32 plus inch arm length. He's got an athletic build with good straight line speed. He's a guy that presents a big target, a nice catch radius for a quarterback. This guy for me is just mainly an inline Y tight end. So he's going to be not the guy that's going to be complimenting, Cole Kmet. I've been talking about, complimenting for Cole Kmet. This guy's going to be an inline Y for me. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. But good hands, capable of high pointing the ball, extending outside his frame, catching on contact in a crowd. During those practices in the Senior Bowl, I did not see him drop a single pass. So, his straight line speed and solid release at the snap allow him to go and threaten the seam. He's got a good feel for coverage in terms of zone, understands where to find those soft spots, where to sit, where to go ahead and extend out there. Blocking, I think he's a solid blocker in terms of inline, efficient moving laterally, using his great hand placement to go ahead and wash out defensive ends. Also does a nice job of using that strong grip to be able to displace, turn, and throw out outside linebackers or edge setters, especially on inside zone runs. So those are the positives that I had on him. Obviously, it does not offer much in terms of after the catch elusiveness. Needs to be better at carrying his speed through his cuts is one thing that I noticed. His breaks, he chops his feet at top of his routes, kind of a telltale sign that he's going to stop and turn or do something there. So, the limited production at Boise State as well is another thing that you kind of can put down on him as a negative, if you will. But overall, I think the kid's a sneaky athlete. I think he's got some nice traits, but again, he's a Y tight end for me.
Yeah, same, 100%. Tough kid. You can see the natural wide receiver about him. That again, you touched on the fact that he played that before. It was his original position. Grew into 259 pound beast of a dude. Measured in a 6'0", 5'5", 9.58 hands, 32 and a half arms, 79 and a quarter wingspan. So decent length, not absurd, but decent length, and that helps him win one-on-one a lot. Athletically average, not going to win a foot race with anybody. I'm actually going to cringe when I watch him do all the testing if they actually televise this stuff at Boise, because I think it's going to be terrible. But he did have a really good
athlete. That was in track and field. What are you talking about?
No, I think it's going to be terrible. I think it's going to be like 5.
I love it.
I think it's going to be awful. And again, not bagging on the kid. I'm just being honest. But I mean, the thing about Mobile, man, like he really jumped on my radar, with his stuff in Mobile. I didn't really get around to watching a whole lot of, Mount West, football this year, unfortunately. Usually I do. Usually I stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning watching Pac-12 After Dark and Mountain West games, and the 11:59 p.m. Hawaii kickoff is always fun. The kid jumped off the screen to me a little bit with the way that he caught the ball and just really his entire on-field demeanor. And he's another one of those kids. I talk about kids I just love the physicality of the position, of the responsibility of playing tight end. He's another one of those kids that's kind of like in the same mold of Tommy Tremble. You listen to this kid talk about, blocking and being physical at the point of contact and everything else. And his eyes light up. He gets really, really jacked up and excited about it. I think he might have a couple wires loose up there. But, those are the kind of dudes, again, that I love to have on my team. The guys I love to play physical, that, want to play the game in a kind of an old-fashioned kind of way. But again, classic Y, kind of tight end. I have him late day 3, more of a similar version. A little bit of a lesser version, actually, compared to Cole Kmet, but a similar version of what we already have that is going to get a lot of snaps next year in Cole Kmet.
Excellent stuff, guys. We move on now. Let's see. Looking at the list, Danny had Tommy Tremble at 8, as we discussed earlier. A new name on the list at number 7 that we haven't talked about is the kid from Michigan, Nick Eubanks. Neil, take it away.
Nick Eubanks, another team captain, leadership, intangibles guy. He's listed as 6'5", 256. I think he got invited to the Shrine Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. Don't have the numbers from Shrine Bowl. Did they play the Shrine Bowl?
No, they did not.
That's what I thought. So yeah, he did get the invite though. So he would have gone, and we would have been able to see him play some postseason ball. But unfortunately, we have film from last year and the just the disgrace of quarterback play from the University of Michigan. Another guy with really kind of poor production from last year. 10 catches, 117 yards, 1 touchdown. Over the course of his career, 45, 578, and 6. In 2019, 25 catches, 4 touchdowns, over 10 starts. So, the most of his production came last year, which is really, really his breakout year. Over the course of his career, 35 games, 19 starts. I think this is a kid that loves playing the game of football. He plays special teams. I think took a lot of pride in it. You listen to him talk about it. It's guys that I talk about the physicality aspect of Tremble and Bates. The guy that take pride in playing special teams and excelling in the third phase of the game is another big sell to me. I think he does a really good job with the receiver aspects of playing the game. I think he's got exceptional body control. He had this one catch against Maryland where the ball was thrown horrifically behind him, and he had to basically pull a 360 to catch the ball, watched it in the entire time, and then turn into a running back after the play. I think he's very cheeky and sharp. With his football intelligence, he knows what he's doing and the way that he runs his routes. Where to go. There's very little wasted movement. And I think I touched on him being supernatural as a pass catcher. Afterwards, he's pretty good at running with the ball after the catch as well. I feel like everything he does, when you're watching all the good stuff, everything he does, and he had to go in 2019 to watch all the good stuff. 2020 just was kind of bad film. He had a really good year in 2019. That's really what you really got to focus on if you want to see the best of Nick Eubanks. But when you're watching him in 2019, you got the feeling everything he does is so smooth and natural. When he moves, he glides, kind of like a ghost out there. He's going to start the route, and all of a sudden he pops up out of nowhere, and the ball's there, and there's nobody within like 20 yards of him. Based on that 2019 film, I could have made an argument for him to be a day 2 guy. I would have had him up there, kind of like around where Freiermuth was. And since 2020 wasn't a great year, he wasn't targeted much. His blocking effort, I thought, was less than inspiring, to be honest with you, compared to the year before. But focusing on the positives, there's a lot to like about the kid, and I kind of ascribe a bit of early day 3 value for him, maybe about a 5th round type of deal.
Yeah, with me, it's a size, it's ability to go ahead and stretch outside his frame and be able to reel in the catch, and he's got some deceptive athletic ability too as well. He shows some of that in his run after the catch ability. The lack of production really bothered me, and I know that the whole Michigan quarterback situation has been up and down the last couple of years, but he's a guy that I could see day 3 as well. But you touched on most of the stuff that I was going to say anyway. But yeah, I can see right here, he's a guy that lined up in the slot here. He's a guy that can be one of those move tight end candidates as well. So definitely a guy that's on my radar, but just not a guy that made my top 10.
Very good. Let's move on then to Pro Wells at number 8 on Neil's list. And then Danny, you had him as your 10A
A.
Neil, talk to us about the kid from TCU, Pro Wells. What a great name.
Yeah, Pro Wells. This kid was always intriguing to me. I remember him in the recruiting process. He was a kid that really kind of he was a basketball player that just jumped off the screen with limited film, right? He was almost one of those kids where if he got 25 scholarships, he'd take a flyer on with him on scholarship number 25 because he has a size. He was not necessarily as thick as he is now, but he has some good size to him. TCU lists him as 6'4", 250. That's pretty spot on. I feel from when I saw this kid on the hoof. That would have been like 6 years ago, I think is when he kind of like burst on the scene. He didn't play football until his senior year in high school. He was always a basketball player, and actually in college wanted to be a two-way player. I think in that sense, I think Marshall was the one school that promised him the ability to play both ways, or two sports, I should say. Never ended up going there. He spent a prep year at Milford Academy. I kind of like guys with stories. I feel like I'm sitting around a campfire, Uncle Stop over here telling stories. He went to prep school in 2016, extended his recruiting process a little bit. Didn't get recruited the way he wanted to. Ended up at Northwest Mississippi Community College, which is where he jumped back into the recruiting process for us. And Northwest Mississippi is one of those really good JUCOs down there in the state of Mississippi. There's like 14 JUCOs in the state of Mississippi, and that's not a euphemism. There really is 14 JUCOs in the state of Mississippi. It's one of the best junior college scenes in the country. Northwest is always one of those that did a really good job of getting their kids out and also on-field success as well. But so he ended up at TCU, took a redshirt year in 2018, and finally in 2019, he's playing college ball, has 2 years of productivity. He should be a redshirt senior this year. He's redshirt senior age. So if you guys, want to kind of put that together mentally of how old, where this kid should be from a development standpoint. Over the course of 2 seasons, 32 catches, 403 yards, 8 touchdowns. This past year in 2020, 13, 199, 195, and 3, similar numbers in 19. So at least he's consistent. He just hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity to put up a bunch of numbers, but had a little bit of a nagging hamstring injury this year. You kind of feel that he would have had some big numbers this year had, he not had to, deal with that a little bit. But, again, you're talking about a purely developmental dude that's only really been playing big boy football for 2 years now. All right. He hasn't been playing very long. I touched on how he didn't start playing until his senior year in high school. I think it probably took him a little bit while to really wrap his mind around the fact that he is a football player. But the fact that he was a big-time basketball player, big-time basketball recruit back in the day, that shows on film. You see the highlights down there. It shows up on film at TCU too. His ability to high point balls, be athletic, out jump somebody, boxing guys out, using body positioning and all those types of things that you learn being a basketball player. Light on his feet. Those types of things. I think he's a developmental Y or F with intriguing athleticism and wide receiver natural ball skills. Being a basketball guy, having to deal with your hands in the football. I wish you saw more of him, being productive this year. You hope that the hamstring thing is not a chronic issue. That was just something that he had to deal with. That was nagging. Either way, I think he's a really intriguing pick, and probably I'm going to take him in the 6th round because I think he gives you a lot of redeeming qualities that you can go ahead and take and mold. He's kind of like a lump of Play-Doh. You can kind of mold him into whatever you want him to be.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I want to get him in my top 10, but there are a couple other guys I like a little bit more, a little bit better than him. But yeah, his traits are intriguing, man. At 6'4", 250 pounds. He looks a little heavier than that. I don't know if that's
a little puffy.
Yeah, so that's something he might have to work on is his conditioning and all that stuff. But I mean, you look at some of the catches he makes here, going up here, high pointing the ball on a fade route here in the end zone, coming down with a touchdown. I mean, that's the type of things I think here is a one-handed catch he makes in the corner route in the end zone. He's got the ability to high point the football. He's got the ability to also get down the field, stretch the seam. You see him be able to do that as well and extend away from his frame and make those catches on the run, hit him in stride. So he's got some really intriguing traits. But like Neil said, he's a guy like a day 3, 6th round pick kind of thing where I can bring him in as a lump of clay. I give him to my tight end coach, be like, hey, here's some talent for you. You make him into a football player that he can play on Sundays, and you might be able to, make something out of him. So like I know he doesn't have the size, but the first player comp I thought of was Antonio Gates. That's the type of guy, former basketball player. Gates was bigger. I think he was about 6'5" or something like that. But
he's 6'4".
This guy can go up there and high point the ball and just a big body tight end who was athletic enough to be able to get down the field and use some of that his natural God-given ability to get downfield and make big plays as well. So that's kind of who I comp them to. But yeah, again, day 3 guy, a guy you can bring in and probably stash away in your roster and develop him.
Me and Danny with the mind melt again. I was just about to say, I was about to jump in as soon as you were done. Like, don't be surprised with the kid's pedigree in basketball, the size that he turns into an Antonio Gates type of kid down the road.
We'll be keeping an eye on him. All right, let's see. Neil had Kenny Yeboah at number 9. Let's go over to Danny. He's got from the kid from Duke, Noah Gray, who I thought played really well at the Senior Bowl. Talk to us about Noah Gray, Danny.
Yeah, another Senior Bowl kid here. Another kid with a basketball background in high school. 2-year starter at Duke, played 48 games, 21 starts. He's played in over 1,800 snaps. A team captain in 2020, a 2-time academic All-ACC. I like seeing those guys that are all academic teams telling me that they got a head on their shoulders as well. So missed only 1 game during his college career, so he's got durability as well. Broke Duke's all-time career receptions marked by a tight end in 2020. And caught at least 1 pass in 26 straight contests, prior to ending his collegiate career. This guy for me is an athletic, classic move tight end. Displays the quick first step, getting off the line of scrimmage, and his solid overall athletic ability and quickness. Soft, natural hands, catches in stride, adjusts very well to the flight of the football. Plays tough. Shows that competitive spirit. Will go inside and take on contact. This is a guy that he was down the field, 10 yards down the field on one play. His quarterback fumbles the ball. He runs back into the backfield and recovers the fumble. So that shows that kind of competitive toughness and the football character he's got. Shows enough speed to be able to threaten the seam. Can be a mismatch versus linebackers with his quickness, his ability to outrun them. Solid route runner. He can carry his speed into and out of his cuts. Quick breaking in and out. Able to set up defenders and create some separation. I like the way he works the zone and gets open in zone coverage as well. I call him a competitive blocker. He's not somebody that's going to overwhelm you and pancake guys, but he's a competitive guy that, his makeup is not going to be someone that's going to just let guys go by him and ole him like you were talking about, Neil, with Yeboah. He's a guy that's going to give his effort, and he might not be the greatest, but he's going to give effort. And he's going to get in the way at least. So that's the one thing I put down on.
There he is blocking Danny on number 55 there.
He moves his feet. He's got the athletic ability, that lateral agility to be able to go ahead and stay with the pass rusher there. Does a decent job there of keeping. I think that's Roche. That's Quincy Roche there from Miami. So does a solid job there. Again, not perfect, not something you would teach in terms of tape and everything, but here one-on-one drills does a solid job of squaring up the edge rusher there. But he's undersized a bit. He's got adequate arm length. He doesn't have the real long arms. I think they're only like 31 and a half or something like that in that range. So he's not going to be a Y or inline tight end, but he's going to be a guy like I was talking about complementing, the guy we have right now on our roster. So this is the type of guy I'm talking about in terms of being able to get downfield, stretch the seam, make some plays, some big, positive chunk yard plays down the field.
Yeah, I mean, what that film told me, what that film showed me, is that the kid's coachable. And you touched on the leadership and the intangibles, team captain, academics. He's at Duke. He better be academically inclined. But I mean, the thing that I liked about him during Senior Bowl week was the fact that he did show that he had some shit to him. You had to watch the Senior Bowl week of practice in order to see that, though, and that was my problem with him. I thought as far as a blocker goes, he lacked fundamentals and strength. I didn't think he could move anyone. I thought he was incredibly weak. Watching him try to block guys. He went one-on-one playing times with Dalen Hayes in the Notre Dame game. That was one that really stuck out to me, and Dalen kind of ate his lunch. So I mean, to me, he's got a ways to go as far as doing some of the things that is required of a guy playing that position. You touched on his measurables. What he's got is 6'0", 3'5", 6'3" and 5'8", 240, just under 9.5 hands, 31.5 arms, 78 and an 1/8 wingspan. So actually, an oddly short wingspan on the kid. You do love his competitive spirit. You love the fact that he's durable. Missed 1 game his entire career. Has played 48 of them. Started 21 of them. Not an incredible ton of production, but I mean, we're talking about some of these guys had 100 yards receiving for the entire year. This kid's got about 1,000 for his career and 8 touchdowns. So I mean, he's shown the ability to go ahead and do something with the ball. I think what he's going to end up being ultimately is just a big finesse receiver, or maybe like a big slot, because he does have decent athletic ability. He's got decent speed. when he's running in the open field, he looks pretty decently fluid. I keep using the word decently a lot. I apologize. I got to use my thesaurus. I feel like, fucking, Matt Nagy and collaborating. But, Ryan Pace over here at collaboration. No, but I mean, I think what he ends up being is pretty much like a big slot, a finesse receiver that, can put forth the effort into the blocking game, but it's not going to be relied upon doing it.
All right. Let us now move. I think this is the last guy on our list, and it is Danny and Neil both have Kylan Granson. Is it Granson or Granson?
Granson.
From SMU at number 10. Go ahead, guys. Who wants to go first?
I can go. Oh yeah, this is another guy from the Senior Bowl. Didn't really stick out to me early on in the week, and then later on started making some plays. You dig back into his background. He's back in high school, he was a regional qualifier in the 4x200 relay. So he's got some speed to him there. Started his collegiate career at Rice, where he played 18 games, sat out 2018 due to the transfer rules, and in the last 2 years he's been a starter at SMU, a two-time All-ACC team member. At SMU he had 78 career receptions, over 1,200 yards, 16.1 average per reception, and 14 touchdowns. So you put on his tape, this guy's, you see it right away, very good athlete, solid off the snap, displays a balance of body control and the quickness in his routes. Natural hands catcher, catches in stride and can adjust very well to the flight of the football or in any sort of errant throws. And we see a lot of that when you're watching SMU, unfortunately, this past season. Solid at uncovering versus coverage, sets up defenders with stems and head nods, creates separation at the top of his route. So, he's got some of those receiver traits, if you will, in his route running ability as well. So runs hard after the catch, has displayed some wiggle to make the first tackler miss, and shown some elusiveness in the open field. He can stretch the field vertically and has shown the competitive toughness to be able to sacrifice his body to make difficult catches. So, this is a guy that can get downfield, and he's a guy that will lay out and stretch out for the football. So another one of these guys that's going to be one of those athletic move tight ends. You're not going to be probably seeing this guy at all lined up inside, inline blocking. He's going to be strictly in the slot. So in my opinion, but another one of those guys that gives you some of that, playmaking ability downfield at the tight end position.
Yeah, this guy's an F all the way. I don't want to ever see this kid lining up next to the tackle. He doesn't show any physicality in the blocking game. He gets pushed around, and I think when you consider all that, I think he's going to get taken late because he's another one of these guys that gives you a really nice redeeming quality in a kid that is more of a thick wide receiver. The way that he runs in open runs in space, his routes, and his fluidity as an athlete, I really liked. Didn't like his size necessarily. He's a kid that's just over 6'2", 242. Right. He's probably kind of in the realm of Brevin Jordan a little bit without the elite athletic ability. Just under 9.5 hands, 32 arms though, and 79.5 wingspan. So, from a build standpoint, from a body type standpoint, he's definitely not what you're looking for. From an athlete standpoint, he gives you some nice qualities. From a physicality standpoint, doesn't give you anything. So he's a guy that I'm going to have at F and just try to feature in the passing game. I think he gives you a lot more than Noah Gray though. In that sense, I actually had Noah Gray off the board in the free agent category. I'm not sure that he's a guy that ends up getting drafted. I think he's more of a Saturday night guy, but I think Kylan, with his athletic ability, I think he's got a little bit of explosiveness about him too. I think he's a guy that gets taken really late. Another transfer guy too, by the way. We got a few transfer guys on this list. He went across town, went from Rice, or not across town, across state, went from Rice to SMU. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really interesting. One academic school to another. But what do you have against Shane Buechele, by the way? Why'd you take a massive shot at Shane Buechele?
I noticed this guy diving downfield, showing some of that competitive juices. This guy's tough as nails. And I'm like, damn, who's throwing the football? Oh, yeah, it's Shane Buechele throwing in, 2 feet behind him. He's got to dig down off the ground and get it, and he's got to jump up over it. There's one play where he's going down, he's running an in route. He has to literally go perpendicular, kind of sort of stretch out, and he gets shellacked by a safety. So it's like, oh, geez, hit him in stride, will you?
Great job scouting these tight ends. It's not a great class.
Right. It's basically Kyle Pitts and the rest of the guys.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
It is true.
Pretty much.
It's like, I think like Neil kind of touched on it. It's almost like 3 tiers. It's Kyle Pitts, and then
Kyle Pitts tier,
and then there's that 4 or 5 other guys in that middle tier, and then there's a bunch of guys who are projects to put it mildly.
Hey, here's one that I thought was really interesting, guys. If I can just like throw one more in here,
please.
Very, very intriguing name here in Matt Bushman at BYU. All right. 6'5", 240-pound dude, senior. But again, guys that are seniors at BYU, they're a little bit older. He's, 25 years old, coming out in the draft. He's actually a kid. I mean, interestingly enough, born in Carbondale, Illinois, but grew up in Tucson, Arizona. He was a baseball kid at BYU as well. Played in 2017. Comes from a big athletic family. His mother, sister, and his wife play volleyball. His brother and his 2 uncles played football at BYU. His uncle played hoops at Utah. This is a kid that led the team in receiving for 2 straight years before he ruptured his Achilles tendon. Now, I know that's a really scary thing right there, rupturing his Achilles tendon. But let's say for the sake of argument, that thing heals up and comes back, like it was before. What this kid did on tape was really intriguing. Numbers-wise, 125 catches over the course of his career, really 2 years. 1,719 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns. Here's another kid I think is flexible enough to play all 3 positions. Nice athletic ability, nice hands. He can high point the ball. Has a really nice catch radius. I feel he's got yak ability. He's a willing blocker. While not some like these other guys, not really a physical presence, but he's a willing blocker, which really kind of tells you everything a lot of times about the blocking game and somebody's intent to excel at it. But I think he's really dangerous in the passing game. I touched on the fact that his age and the injury and those two, that combination of things doesn't necessarily always equal coming back to full health. But again, let's say he does, and let's say he comes back to as a productive dude as he showed at BYU. This was a guy I was tempted to go ahead and talk about in the top 6 guys with the kind of things he put on tape, his production. Who's throwing him the ball too. So, I mean, he had an NFL quarterback, feeding him routes or feeding him balls, in his routes. If it's me, if I'm Ryan Pace, he's one of these first guys that I think about signing on a Saturday night as soon as the last pick is taken in this draft, because I think he's a kid that you could potentially have, you could hit a home run on as a guy that is coming off of a, just an absolutely catastrophic injury. Just thinking maybe, let's get him into camp, see how he's moving around, and if he can, be productive for us.
Yeah, if he wasn't hurt, I have him in my top 10 as well. I like him as well. I like the size, I like the ability to be able to extend outside his frame, make those catches. We saw him right there, high pointing the ball in a crowd. So definitely a guy that intrigues me as well. But you said he ruptures. I thought I saw he tore his MCL, but you said ruptures Achilles. Is what
Achilles.
Was? Okay, yeah, that's a more serious injury.
Yeah.
James Foster brings up the name Cary Angeline, a 6'7", 250-pound basketball player. He doesn't think the Bears are going to get a tight end early, and I probably agree with that. There's not much film on Cary Angeline. Have you guys heard of him? I've actually found some highlight tapes from him at North Carolina State. I'll put that up. You guys know anything about him?
Cary Angeline is another guy I have as a potential Saturday night guy, free agent after the draft. He transferred in to NC State from USC, fight on prior to 2018, not to South Carolina, but the Southern California. Prior to 2018, transferred into North Carolina State. Last year, hauled in 27 catches, 412 yards, 6 touchdowns. Similar year in 2019. So again, another guy, as far as production standpoint, is consistent. I think what he is a guy that you can use in the passing game, but he's also not a guy that's very nimble in the open field either. At 6'7", 250, he's a little bit more of a lumberer, virtually invisible in the blocking game. But again, can function as an F in the passing game. Maybe it's one of those things you just got to teach the kid how to block appropriately. But to me, what I saw is a kid that lacks physicality. And so I have him as a guy that's going to be a super developmental guy that you could take a flyer on as a camp invite or a free agent guy after the draft. And if he ends up hitting, he hits. You don't spend a whole lot of money on him. Don't spend a whole lot of time on him. and rock and roll. Away we go.
Yeah, for me, I haven't spent that much time diving into his tape, but from what I've seen, the little bit I've seen of him, I had him pegged as a UDFA. So like Neil said, a guy after the draft, you probably try and sign and bring him to camp because he's got the size, he's got the ability to extend away from his frame and make those catches. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's intriguing. That things you can work with. So you always take shots on guys that bring you the size element. Bring you something bring a trait to the table, right? So size, ability to catch. Yeah, he's probably not going to be a great blocker. He's probably going to be limited in terms of athletically, but see what you can get out of him. So definitely a guy I can see getting signed as a UDFA.
Excellent. Guys, I want to let our listeners on our audio podcast and our viewers here on YouTube know that this Saturday night at 11 p.m. Central, we've got a new show debuting, and it's called Bulls One-on-One. If you are a Chicago Bulls fan and you love hardcore basketball talk, this is going to be the show for you. It is hosted by two guys who know basketball about, I would say, as well as Danny and Neil know their college football prospects. Really, these guys are really, really good at what they do. Chris Amundsen and Lara Golden, these guys are really going to bring it. They debut their show again Saturday night at 11 p.m. Central. It's called Bulls One-on-One. It is already scheduled on our YouTube channel, so hit that little bell. It'll give you a reminder when it's on, and of course, it will be on demand for you to watch afterwards. Please give it a chance. I think you're really, really going to enjoy the show. These guys really know their stuff. Guys,
perfect timing for a Bulls show. The Bulls are exciting again.
Yes,
they
lots of fun.
How about
lots of fun.
Really happy with this draft pick. The kid nobody knew about.
Patrick Williams.
Yeah, nobody knew about him, but he has really done a sensational job. Let's see what is out there in the chat. Do you guys think we're good at guard, or do you guys think they'll put James or Cody back at center because the guard free agency class is big, especially with teams trying to get out of cap problems? It's an interesting question. I actually looked at Cody Whitehair's contract. It's so expensive to cut Cody Whitehair now or to release him for cap purposes, so that's not going to happen. Perhaps he might be a trade candidate, given that there's a little bit of depth there already on the squad at the guard position, and more guys are going to be available at free agency. But I don't see Cody Whitehair being a trade candidate because there's going to be all these guards out looking for a job. But what do you guys think about the guard position?
I mean, if that combination ended the way the season ended last season, and they start that way this year, I'm okay with that. With Whitehair at left guard, Mustapha at center, and then they had Bars at right guard. But I think they're gonna put James Daniels. Maybe they'll swing Whitehair over to right guard and put Daniels at left guard since he was playing there. I don't know. They've already. There was reports earlier today that they've gone to Whitehair and tried to talk to him about reconstructing his contract, maybe freeing up some salary cap space. So that kind of tells you where that's at with him. But yeah, I mean, as of right now, I think that interior of the offensive line, if they all stay healthy, I think that's becoming a really solid unit there up front. It's the tackles where you have some questions, more so on the right side. I think Leno is what he is. I think at best he's probably an average left tackle. I think a guy you can probably win with. But I think you definitely got to target a right tackle. Probably is my assumption is going to be in the draft as opposed to free agency, because we talked about the cap situation and how they're already trying to clear space to make room for other players. So yeah, that's why Neil and I both highlighted that offensive line is probably going to be, if they have a second round pick, right? If they don't trade it away, it's going to probably be the area they're going to look at, because a ton of offensive linemen are going to go in the second round. Receivers are going to go in the second round. Running backs are going in the second round. So there's a lot of talent that's going to be had in that second round.
Tony's got a question here. He says, "Is Danny the one with the hair? Because I feel like I've been calling you guys by the wrong names."
Yeah, I have hair.
So I put their names up on the screen, Tony. So what do you mean? Not paying attention? You guys did a great job, and I had a blast on this show. Let's just go around the horn here and get final thoughts. I'll start with you, Neil.
Final thoughts. There's a lot of guys still on this list that we didn't talk about today that are worth checking in on and really knowing a few things about, because sleepers happen. One of my favorite ones that has really flashed out to me, I love small businesses. I also love, small school football players. Zach Davison from Central Missouri State University is really intriguing. 6'7", 245. I mean, obviously great listed size, lots of production, moves really well, shows natural ball skills. He's a guy that I'm going to be doing a lot more homework on just to see what this kid's deal is. And especially why nobody else is talking about him, because just the few things I've seen him flash make him really intriguing. So still more homework to do. I still have a list of like 20 guys that we didn't even talk about, just kind of like that receivers class last week. There's, just an unbelievable list of pass catchers and blockers in this draft. Ridiculous depth of these two positions. So, I mean, you guys, this is a fun show. I love doing this every week. And I don't know if those posters that Danny has behind him are mass produced yet, but I'm sure we can figure out a way to go ahead and make those available for everybody if they want to be fanboys about us. We love it. We love you guys. Absolutely love you guys tuning in.
Yeah. We've got a nice core group that always joins us live and interacts with us. And I think that core group is going to expand as the days go on and we get closer and closer to the draft. Danny Shimon, final thoughts, please.
Yeah, in terms of the tight end group, yeah, I mean, Kyle Pitts, like I said earlier in the beginning of the show, is one of the better tight end prospects I've seen personally scouted within the last few years. So, but Neil touched on a good point there. There are some players later on in the draft that you could probably bring in for their traits. We touched a couple of them here, but there are a couple of guys that didn't even enter the draft. They went back as Colmar from Iowa State and Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin. If those guys are juniors, they're probably eligible. They'd probably be in this top 10 list as well. So there's some more guys that are actually staying in school that are talented as well at the tight end position. So tight end is a very important position on offense, both in college and in the NFL. We see how that position has exploded over the years. So, getting guys that can make dynamic plays downfield, but as well also be able to help you within the line, be able to block as well is key. So that's one position that I think a lot of people now are realizing that it is a key position, key element on offense.
Guys, it has been a joy. And again, make sure you try and catch the Bulls one-on-one. Would love to have you on live to interact with Chris and Laro. But if you can't, it will be on demand, just like this show is. This show will be on demand. It's housed as well as all of our Draft on Tap shows. They're all labeled. So if you want to get the guys' opinions on offensive linemen, tackles, guards, the quarterback position, so forth, we've got all those listed over the coming weeks. Now we're going to start turning our attention to defense. Although in the very first week, we did talk about edge players. So we've got that in our catalog of shows. But we're going to continue to just really help out this guy right here. That guy, I think he watches. I think he maybe Tony's is really Ryan Pace.
Remember, he's got a plan. All right, he's got a plan, but everything's on the table.
Tony, who says tight end class is record low shallow this year. I think that might be Ryan Pace with the pseudonym Tony Salamansky. But this has been a blast. I look forward to it every week, and we'll be back here next Thursday. All right, guys?
Sounds good.
All right. Take care now.
Good night.
Closing video.